Sir, good morning, sir.
Very good morning, ma.
Yeah, let's start it, sir.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Happy morning, everyone. It's my immense pleasure to welcome our eminent faculty for the day, CAG Saravana Kumar, sir. CAG Saravana Kumar, sir, is a qualified chartered accountant and cost accountant. CA Saravana Kumar, sir, is our partner in Mrs. BSL and Associate Chartered Accountants, having branches in Madurai and Chennai. He is also an approved trainer for GST by ICAI New Delhi. He has actively contributed and hosted sessions regarding GST and other indirect taxes before various professional bodies, including SICASA, including SIRC of ICAI, for both members and students. No doubt, SAR is a pioneer in GST. I again take this opportunity to welcome Sir on behalf of Madurai branch of SIRC and Salem branch of SIRC. Sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Prasad. Thanks for the nice
My
introduction.
pleasure, sir.
Yeah. So, very good morning to all the student friends. Our agenda for today is we'll be discussing a charge of GST. Charging, we will discuss the charging section and intricate issues in supplies and composition scheme because, before 1/4/2019 and after 1/4/2019, there has been sea change which has happened in composition scheme. So we will analyze all the intricate points connected with the composition scheme. And reverse charge, we will analyze in depth of this notification number 13/2017 as to reverse charge of services, because reverse charge in respect of goods are not covered for in our syllabus. So reverse charge in respect of services we will discuss. And today we will discuss key exemption entries when we discuss reverse charge. Say, for example, when we discuss goods transport agency, we will discuss the connected exemptions available to goods transport agency. And rest of the, say, for example, in respect of services received from government, we will discuss the services exemption available for government services. So those kinds of connected exemption we will see today, and rest of the exemption entries we will discuss tomorrow. And other topics like input tax credit, valuation, and procedure aspects like registration, invoicing, payments, returns. So those aspects will be discussed by Chartered Accountant Balasubramanian sir. So who will handle today's evening class and tomorrow's evening class. So that's how we are planning today. So that takes us to our next session, charge of GST. See, in any taxation law, whatever the tax you take, be it income tax or be it GST, be it customs, or as well indirect taxes like central excise, I mean, even today's available taxes like property tax and your entertainment tax, whatever be the tax you see, the key section you need to refer at the beginning before you read the bare act as such, charging section. What is this charging section? Charging section is nothing but the section which will tell the contents or the triggering event which will attract the underlying tax. So in GST, what does that charging section say? Charging section is 9 in GST. What does it say? Charging section 9 says that when you supply goods or services, you need to pay GST. So this supply is of two kinds. One is intrastate supply, another one is interstate supply. In case of intrastate supply, the governing legislation is CGST and the respective state GST. Say for in Tamil Nadu, it is Central GST, one act across India, Central Goods and Services Tax Act 2017. And in case of Tamil Nadu, you have Tamil Nadu Goods and Services Tax Act 2017. Likewise, for each state, you have respective state legislation. So all intrastate supplies are governed by these two legislations, that is Central GST and respective state GST. Section number 9 of CGST, section number 9 of state GST will govern the intrastate supplies. So the moment a taxable person does intrastate supply, he is liable to pay GST. And when it comes for interstate supply, one state to other state, what is interstate supply, what is intrastate supply, we'll discuss. So this, whenever a person, for the time being, let's all keep in mind that a person supplies goods or services from one state to another state, we call that as interstate supply. Technically, what interstate supply mean, we will discuss in a while. So all interstate supplies, he needs to charge IGST. That IGST is governed by IGST Act, a separate legislation, IGST Act. So this is how the charging section operates. The key important point you students all have to remember is in charging section, they use the term intrastate supply in section 9, interstate supply in section 5 of IGST Act. Intrastate supply or interstate supply by a taxable person. Who has to supply? First of all, what must be supply? In order to attract GST, first of all, supply must be there. What is that supply? It could be intrastate supply or interstate supply. If it is an intrastate supply, you need to pay CGST and SGST. If it is an interstate supply, you need to pay IGST. Likewise, who has to supply? Taxable person has to supply. Who is a taxable person is defined in section 2. What does that say? A taxable person is a person who has taken registration, who has already taken registration in GST, or who's liable to take registration. See, the turnover of a particular dealer or taxable person has crossed 20 lakhs in case of services, 40 lakhs in case of goods, but he has not taken registration, he has not paid tax. Even then, he is liable to pay because he is covered within the meaning of taxable person. So taxable person, two components, a person who has already taken registration, a person who is liable to take registration. Both are covered. So these two persons, when they supply goods or services, which goods? It could be intrastate supply or it could be interstate supply. Both these are covered by charging section. They are liable to pay GST. On what value they have to pay? Charging section says there shall be levied a tax called Central Goods and Services Tax on all intrastate supplies by a taxable supplies of goods or services. What must be supplied? It could be goods or it could be services. All intrastate supplies of goods or services by a taxable person on the value determined under section 15. So on what value he has to pay tax? So section 9 says go to section 15. So section 15 valuation will be taken by Mr. Balasubramanian sir. So on the value decided as per section 15, he needs to pay GST. This is what charging section says, right? So all intrastate or interstate supplies of goods or services by a taxable person on the value determined under section 15. Charging section excludes two components. What are those two components? Supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. That is outside the purview of GST. Supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption is not as per Constitution of India itself. Your Indian Constitution, when GST was enacted, the Constitution has to give power. So the Constitution has given power. Earlier Constitution of India did not give power. You have list 1, list 2, list 3. So state has separate power in taxing goods and the center has had a separate power in taxing goods and services. So now thereafter the Constitution has been amended. So Constitution Amendment Bill has been placed before Parliament and that was approved. It has become an act. It has formed part of Constitution. So as per Constitution of India, so taxing alcoholic liquor for human consumption is still vested with right of states, and center does not have a right to tax supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So whenever a liquor is supplied, it's outside the ambit of GST. Likewise, your 5 petroleum products, petroleum crude, HSD, high-speed diesel oil, motor spirit, natural gas, aviation turbine fuel. These are all as per Constitution they have brought in, but for the time being they've kept out of GST, as not yet included in GST. So this is what your charging section 9 says. Whenever a taxable person supplies goods or services, he needs to pay either IGST or CGST. Let us come to reverse charge. What is that reverse charge? See, first of all, there is a difference between a forward charge and reverse charge. What is that forward charge? I supply goods. So when I supply goods, I collect consideration from my buyer, from my customer or a recipient. When I collect price for the supply of goods by me, I will also collect tax. I am obliged to, by virtue of the statute, I am required to collect tax apart from the price which I receive from a customer. The tax which I collected, I'll have to pay to the government. This is what your entire indirect tax mechanism operates, right? That is why it is so-called indirect tax mechanism. Though the business person collects the tax, primarily the tax liability is sustained by whom? Entire ultimate recipients or customers. So they only suffer the tax, correct? So though the tax is suffered by ultimate customer, the person who supplies goods, the business person who are involved in the middle, who act as the chain for supplying goods or services. So they are collecting and paying. So indirectly, tax is collected by the government from the customers, right? This, in case of direct tax, the tax is levied on a person and that person is liable to pay tax to the government. So that is the primary difference between direct tax and indirect tax. This indirect exception to this concept of indirect tax is reverse charge. What is that reverse charge? Government says, Mr. Business Person, whenever you sell goods, you have to collect the tax and pay to me. This is forward charge. This is what is called forward charge. And there are certain areas wherein the government feels that collecting the tax directly from the recipient, like your direct tax, there are certain sectors, there are certain circumstances which forces the government to collect tax from the ultimate sufferer, that is recipient, for its convenience. What does it cause convenience to the government? The person who collect the tax generally doesn't pay. So those sectors government identify. Or the government identifies those sectors wherein collection would be very easy. Okay, Mr. Receiver, anyhow, Mr. Customer or Mr. Buyer, anyhow you are going to pay tax to the supplier. Instead of paying the tax to the supplier, you directly pay to me. You are responsible to pay. So in those cases, supplier is relieved of his liability. Supplier need not pay tax. Who is ultimately liable? Receiver is liable. So in that case, receiver wears the cap of supplier, meaning he is the person liable to pay tax. He is the taxable person. So all responsibilities which are casted on the supplier, now it is shifted to receiver. So the charge is shifted from supplier to receiver. That is why it is called tax shift or reverse charge mechanism. So under reverse charge mechanism, the receiver is liable. In case of forward charge mechanism, the customer or the receiver doesn't pay tax to the supplier. Who is ultimately responsible? Supplier is responsible. See, when I sell mobile phone, I'm the dealer of mobile phone. I sell mobile phone to you. You are negotiating to me, sir. 10,000 rupees is appears very huge. So you please give a discount. I give discount. Okay, 500 rupees. I'll give discount. You are paying me 9,500. I'm asking you, no, buy. See, you have to pay the tax also. 9,500 plus 18% GST. So you are telling that no, sir. No, it's not possible. I cannot give you the tax. So the price is already negotiated. So let us, both of us, come to a conclusion. Okay, we will finish it for 10,000. 10,000 including tax. What does it mean? As far as buyer is concerned, my mobile phone cost is 10,000. That's all finished. But as far as supplier is concerned, his price is only 10,000 minus GST. So if it is come tax basis, when it is calculated on come tax basis, 10,000 divided by 118 into 100, that is the base price for him. So that's how forward charge mechanism applies. The government would ask only the supplier to pay. In case the supplier claims that, sir, I'm not able to collect the tax from a receiver, what do I do? You pay from your pocket. That's what statutes say. But in case of reverse charge mechanism, who has to ultimately pay? The receiver has to pay. So in charging section, we have seen when GST triggers, what is the point of, what is the triggering point which attracts GST? We have seen who is a taxable person, intrastate supply, and what are all the products which reverse charge. we have discussed. In reverse charge, there are two types. We will discuss in detail when we come to reverse charge topic as such. 9.3 reverse charge, 9.4 reverse charge, we'll discuss later. And charging section discusses another aspect called e-commerce operator, specified supply of services through e-commerce operator. Who is the e-commerce operator? E-commerce operator is a person who connects supplier and receiver through a electronic platform. Your Amazon, your Flipkart, your Print Avenue, all these online sites. What do? Do they supply goods? No. They just connect. I want furniture. I want a table, a study room table. So I log in Amazon website. So many tables are displayed. I choose a table. Amazon, what does it say? It collects the information and supplies to the supplier. Supplier, he sends the table to me. Anyhow, I make the payment to Amazon. So Amazon, what does it say? What does it do? It collects the price along with GST. What GST? For sale of this furniture. So this GST is collected by Amazon. So say for example, 10,000 rupees is the furniture price. 1,800 is the GST, 11,800 Amazon collects. It will not pay 11,800 to the supplier. It is doing a service. For this service, it will collect a service charge or commission. So service charge or commission, let's say 1%. So when it collects 1%, 100 rupees is the service charge of Amazon. So and this 100 rupees, Amazon has to pay GST. So for this connecting transaction, Amazon is the supplier of service for which price is 100 rupees, and under 100 rupees it has to pay GST. It will collect from the supplier 18%, 118 rupees. It will deduct from the 11,800. Apart from this, in terms of GST provisions, Amazon has to collect tax, your TCS, like in your 206C in income tax. Here also you have to collect TCS. All e-commerce operator are required to collect TCS, tax collected at source. So it will collect TCS also. So if TCS, let's say 1%, it will deduct 1% TCS. So 11,800 minus 1% of 10,000 plus GST minus 1% of 10,000. The balance amount will be remitted to the supplier. This is how e-commerce operator mechanism operates. So this is a concept. And what is the content of section 9 subsection 5? Section 9 subsection 5 says, in case of e-commerce operator, the government may specify certain services. For those specified services, e-commerce operator will not, that is, original supplier will not be liable to pay GST. The example we have discussed just now, what has happened? In the example we have discussed just now, e-commerce, that Amazon will collect GST and it will remit the GST to the supplier, and supplier will remit back to the government. Here, who is responsible for paying GST? The ultimate supplier. From the recipient, the Amazon has collected tax and it has given to supplier, and supplier is giving that to government, right? But there are certain exceptions to this. That is what section 9.5. Government would specify certain services. On those specified services, supplier will not be responsible to pay GST. E-commerce operator will be responsible, will be liable to pay GST. So what are those services? Transportation of passenger service by radio cab, motor cab, maxi cab, and motorcycle. So these services, supplier is relieved of its liability. Like your Ola, Uber, Red Taxi, these people are responsible to collect tax. You practically see who gives the invoice. When I ride through Ola cab, the driver, because the government cannot collect tax from those drivers, most of them would be below taxable limit, correct? But it is a service. So what the government felt appropriate, it has fixed e-commerce operator, Ola, as the taxable person. Though Ola is not the actual supplier, it has shifted the responsibility of paying tax to Ola. What Ola will do, it will collect the tax from the riders, that is passengers, customers. So that tax will be remitted to the government. All the liabilities which are fixed to the driver or the car owner will be has been shifted to e-commerce operator, that is Ola. So that's what section 9.5 says. So the first service is transportation of passenger service by radio cab, motor cab, maxi cab, and motorcycle. This is number one service. Number two and three services are specified here. So there is a major difference between these services. Service number one is transportation of passenger service by radio cab, motor vehicles, right? Service number two is providing accommodation in hotels inns by person below threshold limit. And the third service is services of housekeeping, just plumbing, carpenting, etc. by persons below threshold limit. So I visit Just Dial site. In Just Dial site, I require the service of an electrician. So I give order. Electrician comes to my office and he provides electrician service. So the money, if I have to pay to Just Dial, and through Just Dial, if it is going to electrician, but in Just Dial, the mechanism happens otherwise. Let us hypothetically make an example that I will not give money to the electrician, but I will pay money to Just Dial. So in that case, Just Dial is responsible to pay GST to government, provided the threshold limit of the housekeeping service, that electrician service, is below 20 lakh rupees. Likewise, you would have seen OYO. So through online app, through OYO app, if I book any hotels, I go to Bangalore, I go to Delhi. So wherein instead of going there and searching hotel, through these apps, OYO apps, I book a room. So there, OYO is responsible to collect GST, provided the hotel which I have booked, whose threshold limit is below 20 lakhs. So if that being the case, OYO is responsible for paying tax. So we have discussed, whenever service is provided through e-commerce operator, three specified services are there. Out of these three specified services, e-commerce operator will be responsible to pay GST. He will bear the cap of supplier of services. For service number one, irrespective of the threshold limit of the service provider, e-commerce operator has to pay tax. But in other two services, what are those services? Accommodation services and housekeeping services. These two services, e-commerce operator has to get a declaration from those service providers saying that are they below taxable limit or above threshold limit. In case they are below threshold limit, e-commerce operator has to collect tax and pay. In case they are more than threshold limit, like other services or goods we have discussed, it will collect tax and remit to the supplier. Supplier will be paying back to the government. So this is how your entire charge applies in case of GST. Okay. Next, interstate supply and intrastate supply. So for all the students who are pursuing intermediate, so your syllabus contains the concept of interstate and intrastate only to the extent as mentioned in the slide. That is what is interstate supply, what is intrastate supply is contained in section 7 and 8 of IGST Act. However, it contains 3-4 parameters to classify a particular transaction as interstate and intrastate. But then your syllabus contains only what do you call these parameters which are mentioned in the slide. Prasad, am I audible? My voice is clear?
Sir, yes, sir.
Some chat voice is not clear.
That came at the very beginning of the meeting, sir. It's fine now, sir.
Fine, right. Thank you. So this interstate supply, intrastate supply, what does that say? So only one parameter for you, which is there in your syllabus. What does it they say? See, when the location of supplier and place of supply. See, let me tell an example. I sell goods to Kerala, Kochi. It is an interstate supply. We can very well come to a conclusion. In case I go to Cochin and I purchase goods, does this amount to interstate or intrastate? Let me tell another example. See, I provide service to my client in Madurai. It is an intrastate supply, right? It is I will charge CGST, SGST. I provide service to a person in Delhi. It is an interstate supply. Common sense. I'm just applying my common sense. Logically, we are coming to a conclusion that it is an interstate supply. I need to pay IGST. Let me twist an example. a client has come to me. So a big raid, income tax raid has happened. So he's telling me that so the department proposes addition of 2 crores. So on this 2 crores, the tax, everything comes, the penalty comes, that itself is 1.5 crores. What will I do? Please save me. So I analyze all the provisions. So I would like to approach an expert in this field. So my friend who has handled many surveys, search cases in income tax. So I felt appropriate to approach him for guidance. So he is in Bangalore. My friend is in Bangalore, who is also a chartered accountant. I call him Mr. Say, let's assume that Mr. Loganathan, who is in Bangalore. I call Mr. Loganathan, CA Loganathan, this is the case which I have. Could you please help me out? He asked me to send all the details. I'm sending all the details to him through mail. So he analyzes everything. He sends an opinion along with the bill. He sends an opinion. Does this interstate or intrastate for him? Our logic, common sense says, sir, he is supplying service from Bangalore. So it could be interstate supply. Fine. I'm twisting the same example. What Mr. Loganathan says, Saravana Kumar, it is better we'll meet in person because many things need to be discussed. So that cannot happen over phone or mail. So better you come down to my place. Let's discuss all. So I take all the data with me and I go to Bangalore. There in his office, I stay there. I stay there in Bangalore for 2 days. So I provide all the data to him. So he analyzes all the data. So thereafter he comes to a conclusion. He gives me an opinion. In hard copy, he takes a printout and he gives to me. So does this amount to interstate supply or interstate? Confusion exists, right? So that's why as per section 7 and 8 of IGST Act, what is interstate supply, what is intrastate supply, we need to see. So our common sense is different. What does the Act says? Act says a particular supply is considered as interstate supply when the two aspects are in two different states. What are those two aspects? Location of supplier. It could be supplier of goods or it could be supplier of services. Location of the supplier and place of supply are in two different states or in two different union territory or in one union territory and another state. If that being the case, then it is interstate supply. If location of the supplier and place of supply are in same state or in same union territory, then only it is called intrastate supply. So we need to see location of the supplier. In our example, when I get an opinion from my friend, look, who is the supplier? Chartered accountant Loganathan is the supplier. Who is the receiver? Saravana Kumar is the receiver, right? So location of the supplier, where is he located? Of course, definitions are there. Let us not discuss. It is a final level syllabus. This aspect is alone in your syllabus. So who is where is the location of supplier? Bangalore. So Mr. Loganathan has taken registration in Bangalore. Bangalore is the location of supplier. Place of supply. What is this place of supply? You need to identify where is the place of supply. Whether the place of supply is in Madurai or is the place okay, now, ma?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Everything is clear, right?
Yes, everything is clear, sir.
Prasad, in case the video disconnects, you just inform me through chat box. I will, any issues, I will call you through another number because when call comes in this number, no, it's mobile hotspot, it gets disconnected. Huh?
Okay, sir, no issues.
I'll share a number to you.
Yes, yes.
Fine. So this one, where were we? The example which I said, my the first opinion came through email, right? So now our mind is confused. Where is the place of supply? So now we need to refer section 10, 11, 12, 13. 10 and 11 is for goods. What do you call place of supply of goods? Place of supply of services 12 and 13. Fine. So now, according to section 10, 11, 12, 13 of IGST Act, what is the place of supply we need to identify? Of course, this place of supply is in final syllabus. So in the example we have discussed, let me apply the provisions of section 12, which says that wherever the location of recipient is there for those services other than the specified services, which are covered in section 12, subsection 3, 4, 5, it goes on. Wherever default scenario is there, it says that location of the recipient is the place of supply. So in our example, as per what do you call, somebody has raised hand, wants to clarify some doubt, it seems. Galaxy J7. Prasad, whenever the students have doubts, shall I clarify then and there?
Yes, sir. It's up to you. Like we can have a last 15 or 20 minutes for discussion, sir.
Fine.
Where everyone can raise their doubts and you can answer them.
Fine. So that would be appropriate. Somebody has raised hand, it seems. So what we will see is the last 15 minutes or 10 minutes we will allocate for clarification, and thereafter we will go ahead. So I request the students to note down their queries, so we may discuss later. So in this case, place of supply is Madurai, Tamil Nadu. Location of the supplier is Bangalore. These are two different states. So in our both example, it would be interstate supply. So what we need to see, location of the supplier and place of supply must be in two different states or two different union territory or in one union territory. Suppose Pondicherry. So I said Mr. Lognath is in Pondicherry. Pondicherry is a union territory. I am in Tamil Nadu. So the location of the supplier is in Pondicherry. Location of the recipient, place of supply is in Madurai, Tamil Nadu. So both are different. So it is an interstate supply. So that's how you need to identify interstate supply and intrastate supply. Apart from this, the certain other parameters are also there, which is not covered in your syllabus, like supply to SEZ, Special Economic Zone, and your and supplier is not identified. 3-4 parameters are import of goods outside the territory of, import of goods in the custom territory of India before home clearance. So all those steps are covered in your final syllabus. So I'm not discussing those things here. So for the limited purpose of your syllabus, interstate and intrastate supply, you please remember these points alone. So let's now move on to supply. So very important, the major portion of our discussion, supply, we will discuss. As I said, the charging section is stated the key criteria for liability of GST is supply. So that could be intrastate supply and interstate supply. Supply of what? It could be supply of goods or services or both. Supply of goods or services or both. So you need to know the definition of goods and services. What are goods? What are services? You need to know, right? Goods. So the key element, I will not take you through each and every being what you call crash course. We cannot go in depth of all the points, but whatever is most relevant for your exam purpose, we'll discuss. In the goods definition and service definition, what you need to remember, that alone I will tell you. What are goods? Students who have already pursued other courses or earlier indirect taxes may know. Goods means we will always say movable properties. Likewise, the same wordings are there in GST goods definition. It is every kind of movable property. So what is not included in goods? Immovable properties. Immovable properties are not included in goods. Sale of immovable properties, say sale of building. I will tell you where it is covered later, right? So goods means every kind of movable property. Please remember, other than money and securities. The first line is very, very important. So other rest of the definition is what do you call general definition they have attached, like in as well indirect taxes. Most of the application oriented part of goods definition is this first line. Every kind of movable property other than money and securities. So when it is not a supply of goods, no GST, right? So when nobody will sell money, but they will allow their money to be used by others. Correct. When I may lend money to my friend for 10% or 12% interest. So when I lend money as such, it is not a sale. It is not covered within the, and this money per se is not goods. So that transfer of money from one person to another person is not goods, will not attract GST, right? But when I receive interest, does that amount to interest? I mean, GST, we will discuss. And securities, when I purchase Reliance shares, when I purchase Infosys shares from a stock exchange, so does that amount to supply? Does that amount to goods? So definition says other than money and securities. That is also not covered within the definition of goods. So it is not goods. When I sell movable property, it is subject to GST. When I sell immovable property, it is not covered by the definition of goods. I need to see whether it is covered by service. We will see. So that the goods definition says money and securities, but includes actionable claim, growing crops, grass and things attached to or forming part of the land, which are agreed to be served before supply or under contract of supply. Actionable claim is nothing but your unsecured loan or your life insurance policy, assignment of life insurance policy. Some rights you can get it from others. When you are transferring that right, does it amount to goods? Yes, it amounts to goods. Does that liable to GST? We will see. Okay. So for the time being, what you need to remember is actionable claims are goods. Fine. So that is what goods definitions say. Services. What do you mean by service as per GST definition? Service means anything other than goods. Anything covers everything, leaves nothing. What does that mean? Any transaction, first of all, you need to ascertain whether it is goods or service. The moment it is excluded from the definition of goods, obviously it is covered within the definition of service. Service means anything other than goods, comma, money and securities. So here also they are excluding money and securities. When I transfer money, it is neither goods nor services. When I transfer securities, it is neither goods nor services. So when I purchase Reliance shares, Infosys shares, or Franklin Templeton Mutual Fund, or your US Blue Chip Fund, Access US Blue Chip Fund, all those mutual fund units, debentures, bonds, shares, all this type, your RBI is issued gold bond, RBI gold bond, Government of India gold bond, what do you call your NSC, National Savings Certificate. All these securities are neither goods nor services. When these are sold, when these are traded in stock exchanges, no GST would apply. No GST would apply for the sale portion because it is outside the ambit of goods. Why, sir? Why GST is not applicable? It is neither goods nor services. Let it so being the case. When so be the case, why should not charging section will not apply? What we have seen in charging section says intrastate supply of goods or services or interstate supply of goods or services. When a particular thing is neither goods nor services, it is outside the ambit of charging section. So when I sell services, it is not subject to GST. Correct. So service definition says, but includes activities relating to use of money or its conversion by cash or by any other mode from one form, currency or denomination to another form, currency or denomination for which a separate consideration is charged. Very important. Definition says, sir, your money is not goods. But if you are converting money from one currency to another currency, that is service. When you are lending money to others, you are getting a consideration called interest. That is also a service. Sir, should I pay GST? separate exemption entry is there, but charging section is attracted. It is covered within the definition of service. When I transfer money or when I lend money, that lending is the consideration which I receive for that lending part is subject to GST, but then for the time being it is exempt. It is covered within the exempted service. And for the removal of doubts, an explanation is there. See, explanation to service definition is there, which says that for the removal of doubts, it is hereby clarified that the expression service includes facilitating or arranging transaction in securities. So when I transfer securities, the incidental services of those securities, meaning brokerage and what you call your documentation charges or exit load, entry load, these kind of charges are subject to GST. That is what the explanation says. If you are getting any consideration for facilitating or arranging transaction in securities, then it is services. You need to pay GST. So understanding these two terms, very, very important. And the next important definition is business. So we'll not see the each and every aspect. Important part of this business definition, I will tell you for your exam purpose what is relevant, and on the application part in your syllabus, wherever the application part comes, those things I will discuss on the business definition. Business includes any trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vacation, adventure, wager, or any other similar activity. Important point, whether or not it is for a pecuniary benefit. So I incur loss in a business. I cannot claim that, sir, I have incurred a loss. I will not pay income tax because there is no taxable income. But in case of GST, I cannot claim that, sir, it is my business has incurred loss, so I cannot pay GST. But it amounts to business. Whether or not it is for a pecuniary financial benefit, profit motive. I mean, profit is there or not, you need not worry. It is covered within the definition of business. Why am I discussing this business? We are going to see the definition of supply. Very important parameters are there in supply. So those important parameters, goods, service, business. You need to understand all these three aspects. These three aspects will come time and again. These three aspects will come in 90% of your GST syllabus, be it in inter or in final. Understanding these three concepts are very much relevant for you. Goods, services, business. Because in supply, we will see in the course or furtherance of business. So a particular thing, if it is not goods, if it is not services, if it is not business, no supply, no GST would come. So to call a particular activity as business, it should amount to trade, commerce, manufacture, profession. Trade, you all know, buying and selling goods. Commercial motive. What is that commercial motive? You need not have a profit motive. You should have a commercial motive. That is, you want to be in the business. I will do. Even a charitable trust may engage in business. When it engages itself in business, it is not necessary that it has to, earn profit. When it continuously enters into business, it has a commercial motive. Manufacture. So I put raw material, process it, another new product comes. And that product I sell. Manufacture. Profession of chartered accountancy, company secretary, architect, film artist, all those profession. Vacation, even taking a film for a particular period, and that film is being run for many days. Adventure. So adventure is an activity for a temporary nature which attracts many people, for which a consideration is charged. Wager is a wager or totalizer in your cruise. That for betting, gambling. So those kinds of activities are covered in wager or other similar activity, whether or not it is for a pecuniary benefit. Clause B is very important. See, clause B and C. First three clauses are very important. All the students must be aware of this. The moment you see business definition, your mind should remember these 3 points. These 3 points are very, very important. So first is these are trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vacation. And second aspect, point number B, which says any activity or transaction in connection with or incidental or ancillary to above. When I do a particular activity, I have to see what is my main activity. When my main activity is business, obviously my ancillary activities are all business. Temple, running a temple. So a temple is there, a charitable trust they are floating. So they are registering under charitable trust 12A of the Income Tax Act. What is the main aspect of or main activity of temple? Darshan, facilitating the people to get darshan of God or deity, right? Does this amount to trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vacation, adventure, wager? In none of the activities you can classify the activity of temple. So that temple is not at all a business. But temple collects many consideration, like it sells prasadam, it sells you special darshan charge. Like that, many aspects are being carried out by temple. Correct. So these are all ancillary activities. Main aspect is darshan. When main aspect is darshan, these ancillary activities, even though it partakes the characteristics of business, it doesn't fit into the definition of business. It doesn't fit into the definition of business. So hence, it will not amount to business. Consideration collected by temples, it may not be falling within the ambit of GST, right? But some practical contradictions are there, which will be settled in due course of time. For your understanding, I have taken the example of temple. Clause C, what does it say? Any activity or transaction in the nature of A above, whether or not there is a volume, frequency, continuity, or regularity of such transaction. So, in a year, only 2 months I am doing business. Can I say that I did not do business? Not at all possible. Even one-time activity may amount to business if it fall within the if it is covered within the terms in clause A. So these three aspects in business is very, very important. So when we see example, other points we will discuss. So now let's move on to definition of supply. So I have given many examples for supply. So first we'll see the definition and thereafter we will see the examples. All those examples are from your tested examples. I have taken from your suggested answers, revision test papers, study material, and what do you call practice questions. So ICA is giving you practice questions when you browse through ICA website and students portal. You have questions for practice is there. So many problems I've taken from those aspects for supply. We will see the definition and thereafter we will discuss what do you call the examples which I have given in the slides. First of all, what is supply? Section 7 is the definition. We cannot say definition as such. It says that the supply is not defined in GST Act. Only scope is stated in section 7. When you say section 7, you see section 7 subsection, it says for the purposes of this act, the expression supply includes. The heading of section 7 is scope of supply. It doesn't say definition. Had it been the definition, they would have included in section 2, wherein all the definitions are available. So they would have included supply definition in section 2 itself, but they didn't do that. They have separately stated supply and the title they are giving us scope of supply. So supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services. So we have seen what are goods, what are services. Or services are both, such as they are giving example. They are giving example such as your supply could be in the form of sale, or it could be the form of transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal. What is sale? Buying a product and selling it for a profit. Sale. And ownership is transfer. For a consideration, I am transferring ownership of particular goods, title to the goods from one person to another person. Transfer, it may involve ownership or may not involve ownership. Just I am transferring. Possession and control is transferred from one person to another person for a consideration. So does it amount to goods or services? We will see later. Transfer. Barter, exchange. What is barter? Barter, suppose I take class to my students. So I am involved in coaching CA students. So one of the student's father is an architect. Instead of collecting fee from the students, I asked his father to give me a drawing for my new house. So he gives me consultancy service, architect consultancy service. I give him coaching to his son. So this is barter. Exchange of goods for goods, or sorry, barter means what you call not pure exchange. Pure exchange is a separate meaning. Barter means I am giving one goods against which I am getting another goods, or it could be services, goods for goods, goods for services, or services for goods, or services for services. That is called barter. Then what does that exchange means? In exchange, monetary consideration will be available. I sell my, I purchase new Honda car. When I purchase new Honda car, I exchange my old Baleno vehicle. Baleno, I give Baleno vehicle, the showroom takes my Baleno vehicle and it gives reduction of 4 lakhs. My Honda car is 12 lakh rupees. Out of 12 lakhs, they reduce 4 lakhs for my old Baleno vehicle. So this is exchange, wherein money consideration, monetary consideration is also involved. So that is exchange. License, I'm giving permission to use or to do a particular act. To employ contract laborers in my factory, I have to get contract labor license from the government. So government is licensing me to employ contract laborers license. Rental lease, almost a thin line of difference. I am allowing others to use my property, for which a consideration is charged. Rental lease. What is the difference between renting and leasing? Renting and leasing, when you see, in case of lease, it could be a finance lease or operating lease. Your operating lease is treated at par with renting, because I take a machinery on hire. That hire charges under operating lease means every year I will pay. But in case of finance lease, almost useful life of the machinery, I will use that. But in case of operating lease, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, I will. And at the end of useful life, an option is given to the lessee to buy the machinery also. That is finance lease. So that thin line of difference exists between renting and leasing. But both renting and leasing are covered in the definition of supply. Disposal, I scrap it. I shift my office from old place to new place. So some scrapped furniture is there, scrapped computers are there. I dispose it off. I don't want to take it. I want to purchase new one. And when these scrapped items are there, some money, some salvage money I get, I dispose it off. Or I may not even get a consideration. I dispose it off. That is disposal. So does that amount to consider? Does that amount to supply? Yes, it amounts to supply. But and the other wordings we have to see. I will explain this disposal concept when we come for deemed supply. For the time being, please remember that is also supply, because the word used here is disposal. Disposal by a person, meaning a person must be there in the supply activity. Only then it amounts to supply by a person in the course or furtherance of business. We have discussed definition of business. So this activity must fit into the definition of business in the course or furtherance of business, made or agreed to be made. There must be a contract of supply. There must be a contract, and according to the terms of the contract, I enter activities. So agreed or made or agreed to be made. Very important point for consideration. When consideration doesn't exist, it doesn't amount to supply. I donate some 10 chairs. I run a furniture showroom. I donate 10 chairs to an orphanage or a home or a charitable institution. So there is no consideration. I am just donating it. In consideration to it, I didn't get anything. So that doesn't amount to supply. So that is an amount of supply. I will not charge GST because it is not, it doesn't have any consideration. So I gift, I gift some goods to another company or a school, or even to my son. I gift to my son, or that a related party transaction. My friend's son's friend I am gifting. My old laptop I am gifting to my son's friend. So that is an amount to supply, no consideration. So when you seek supply, these transactions, it should have goods or services, and it should be by a person, it should be in the course or furtherance of business. There should be a contract made or agreed to be made and consideration. These aspects must be present in a supply transaction. If any of these aspects are absent, then that doesn't amount to supply. No GST would be applicable. So the starting point in your GST is supply. This is clause number A of the definition. Clause number B, very, very important, boss. Whether you have patience or not, whether you like it or not, please start from supply definition in GST. Be thorough with the definition of supply. Many questions can be asked in supply. You can be twisted with many examples. We will see those examples in supply definition, right? Clause B. What does that clause B says? Import of services for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. So in clause A, what we have seen, in the course or furtherance of business is very much important. But in clause B, they are not giving importance to business aspect. I am importing services for a consideration. Even it could be for personal purpose. Even if it could be for personal purpose, it is subject to GST. Meaning, I know a famous architect in London. That architect is giving me a drawing for my new house in Madurai. So I pay him consideration. Does this amount to business activity? I am going to construct my own building, my own house for the purpose of self-occupation, for which I get an architecture service from London. That doesn't amount to supply because, that amounts to supply because clause B. Even if it could be for personal purpose, it is very much important. Students, please understand, you have to compare this clause B and para 4 of schedule 1. We are going to discuss deemed supplies. In deemed supplies, the same import of service comes, but there is a small difference. Using clause B of section 7 and para 4 of schedule 1, you may be twisted with many examples. I've listed many examples we will discuss. So those many examples, in order to solve those kinds of problems, all those are tested in your exams and which are given in your RTPs and in your suggested answer, these questions for practice. So you have to compare and be thorough with the difference between import of services in clause B and import of services in clause 4 of schedule 1. We will discuss. The next aspect, the activities specified in schedule 1, made or agreed to be made without consideration. See, first of all, I have satisfied myself that a particular activity comes within the definition of supply. And thereafter, I have to see whether it is for a consideration or not. Only if it is for a consideration, that is a supply. So this is specified in schedule 1. The activities specified in schedule 1. So they are listing 4 kinds of activities. Those 4 kinds of activities, even if made without consideration, that amounts to supply. GST is applicable. 4 aspects are given. For those 4 aspects, you have to check all the parameters in clause A except consideration. You have to check whether does that amount to goods or services, does that amount to in the course or furtherance of business, is it made or agreed to be made, but it need not be for a consideration. When it is without a consideration, even if it is without a consideration, it amounts to supply. Sir, on what value should I pay? Go to section 15. Section 15 says transaction value. That transaction value, if you are not able to identify, go to valuation rules. So that is what stated in section 15, right? So this is next part of the supply definition. Very important, clause 1 capital A, section 7.1 clause A, B, C talks about supply. Section 7.1 subclause 1 capital A says that the moment you have identified a particular activity is supply, now it is your duty to identify whether does that amount to goods or does that amount to service. Does it fall under goods or does it fall under service? You have to identify. Correct. So that is contained in clause 1A, available in schedule 2. Schedule 2 says it classifies 7 broad categories of transaction. Those 7 broad categories of transaction, it says that it is amounting to supply of goods, it is amounting to supply of services. Because in your erstwhile service tax regime, many legal disputes were there. Say, for example, in your restaurant activity, when you go to a restaurant, does that amount to goods or service? You are taking idli. That idli, it is visible, movable property. Can you say it is goods? and it is served in a restaurant. That's act of serving is a service. So will I treat that as goods or service? Many case laws were there in STL service tax regime, but now it has been clarified that it amounts to service. Restaurant activity, goods supplied in a restaurant is service. Whether you eat idli or hot soft drinks or your snacks, all those stuffs are service. You need to apply rate applicable to service for restaurant activity that doesn't amount to goods. So likewise, many activities. Sorry, it has got disconnected. I'm just sharing the screen again. Is that okay now?
We cannot see your screen still. Yeah, we are good, sir. Yeah, but you can go ahead.
So neither supply of goods nor supply of services. It doesn't amount to goods or services. That is what your negative list. In addition to that is given in, that is available in Schedule 3. We will see what are the entries which are there in Schedule 3. In addition to Schedule 3, through notification, the government may specify these are the activities which doesn't amount to supply of goods, doesn't amount to supply of services. So those aspects also we will see. So this, so when you see supply definition, first it says general definition of supply, all goods or services and sale and in the course of furtherance of business consideration. These aspects general definition. And second one is exception to clause A, absence of business, but consideration is there in case of import of services. In case of clause C, consideration is not there, but all other aspects are there. Those are specified in Schedule 1. So that's all with regard to supply. Next aspect of definition says how to identify goods, how to identify services. And the third aspect says negative list of services. These items do not fall under the category of supply of, it is neither supply of goods, neither nor supply of services. That's what it says. Now we'll move on to Schedule 1. What are the categories which are, what is Schedule 1? Supplies without consideration. We will discuss these aspects and thereafter we will see examples and thereafter we will see Schedule 2 and 3. Okay. So far we have discussed many points. So using those points, what were the questions tested in your exam, we will discuss that and thereafter we will see Schedule 2 and 3. Schedule 1 contains 4 aspects, 4 points. All these 4 points are very, very important for your syllabus. You cannot see a question paper without questions on supply on it. Supply illama question paper irukka vaipe illa. So adanal supply neenga romba nalla padichikkiradhu romba mukkiyam. Okay, fine. And supply is the starting point for all your syllabus, all your rest of the portions of your syllabus in GST in intermediate. Fine. Schedule 1, what does it say? Permanent transfer or disposal. I said I will explain disposal later. Correct. Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where input tax credit has been availed on such assets. Permanent transfer. There is a permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where input tax. See, I said, I am donating 10 shares to charitable institution. Since there is no consideration as per clause 1, it doesn't amount to supply. But when I donate, in case I have taken input tax credit on those 10 shares, even though there is no consideration, it doesn't amount to supply. It doesn't amount to supply for me. But does that amount to supply for the charitable institution which have got shares? For the charitable institution, it doesn't amount to supply because there is no consideration. But for me, Though no consideration, since I've taken input tax credit on those 10 shares, it amounts to supply. I have to pay GST for donation of those 10 shares. In case I have not availed input tax credit, say I have reversed the availed input tax credit, I have reversed. It doesn't amount to supply now. So the first point is, when I transfer any business assets, it could be goods. They have used the word business assets. They did not use the word goods. Why they have used business assets? It could be your input or it could be your capital goods. So when you are disposing your capital goods also, I am donating my chair or donating my computer to any person, for which if I have taken input tax credit, means that amounts to supply. But the person who receives as a gift or the person who receives that as a donation, it doesn't amount to supply, because he is getting laptops, he is getting chairs, but against which, what is he giving? He is not giving anything, right? So for him, that is no consideration exists, that doesn't amount to supply. And disposal, I said, for disposal, I am vacating my old office and I'm going to new office. Old computers are there, old printers are there. I'm telling, so okay, let us not, I don't want all these assets. Let us leave it. Whoever wants to take, let them take. I don't want any consideration. Does that amount to supply? It may amount to supply or may not amount to supply. Why? Two aspects, two choices are there. If I have taken input tax credit, it amounts to supply. The items which I am leaving, that is, I am disposing. When my mind says that I don't want all these items. So if I have taken input tax credit and I leave, I am just asking the packers and movers to take. You please take and you use, you give it to your son or anybody. I don't want all this assets. So he is taking, he doesn't give me any consideration. Does that amount to supply? On those disposed assets, if I taken input tax credit, it amounts to supply, I have to pay GST. In case I have not taken input tax credit on those assets which I have left, which I have disposed, then it doesn't amount to supply. Suppose he is giving me some 500 rupees, then it amounts to supply. I am scrapping all those items. So now consideration exists. Obviously, it is a supply. So you need to see whether this permanent transfer or disposal of business assets, even if it is without consideration, where I have taken input tax credit, it amounts to supply. Stock transfer to my sister concern. Stock transfer to my sister concern. That is, from sister concern in the sense, I have a factory in Tamil Nadu, I have a factory in Pune. From the Tamil Nadu factory, Chennai factory to Pune factory, stocks are transferred. Input tax credit would have been taken. It amounts to supply by virtue of clause 1, that is para 1 of schedule 1, and it amounts to supply para 2. We will discuss. According to para 2 also it amounts to supply, right? Suppose I am sending stocks for which I have not taken input tax credit. Let us assume, since it is the ultimate, because of some restrictions in input tax credit, I am some car is there used for directors. So that car I am transferring to my Pune factory for usage of their executives. So when I am transferring this car from Chennai to Pune, obviously for this motor car, I would not have taken input tax credit. So it is not amounting supply as per class 1, but as per class 2, it amounts to supply because I am transferring to my related person. So what does subsequent para 2 says? When transfer happens between related person, that is supply of goods or services or both happens between related person or between distinct person as specified in section 25, then made in the course or furtherance of business. Very important, when made in the course or furtherance of business. Consideration is, even if consideration is not there, business motive must be there. That's what they say. So related person or between distinct person. In the old example, I said, I am gifting my laptop to my son. My son is a related party, right? So by virtue of class 2, it is not in the course or furtherance of business. It doesn't amount to supply. But virtue of class 1, if I take an input tax credit on that laptop, it amounts to supply. So those distinction you need to see. So who is a related person and who is a distinct person? You need to know. Definitions are there. Related person is defined in explanation to section 15, valuation. So these are the related persons. persons, such persons are officers and directors of one another's business. See, all these clauses are very, very important. Quickly, I will tell you the meaning of these aspects because of the important, of course, due to paucity of the time, I cannot give you all examples because a lot to cover now. I will, on these items, for the important aspects, I will tell you example, and what are all not covered, I will tell you, because if they are not, if those aspects are not covered here, obviously it is not fitting to para 2. Such persons are officers or directors of one another's business. See, business A is there, business B is there. Mr. X has business A, Mr. Y has business B. Mr. X is the general manager in Y's business, and Mr. Y is the general manager in X business. That is what they say, officers and directors of one another's business. Suppose my friend Mr. Balasubramanian sir is there. He has a concern. I have also a concern. He has a Bala enterprise. I have Saravana enterprise. I have appointed Balasubramanian as my general manager. He has appointed me as a president, vice president of operations in his business. So we are employees or officers or directors of one another's business. It doesn't mean my officers or directors are related party. That is covered by a separate clause. Here, what do they mean is officers as directors of one another's business means I must be an officer in another business and he must be an officer in my business. When that being the case, these two entities are related. Entity A, Saravana Enterprise, Bala Enterprise. So Saravana Kumar is the general manager in Bala's enterprise. Balasubramanian is the general manager in Saravana's enterprise. So now Saravana Enterprise and Bala Enterprise are related person. Transaction between Bala Enterprise and Saravana Enterprise will be covered by clause 2, para number 2 of schedule 1. Such persons are legally recognized partners. Very, very important aspect is there here. Students, persons, including legal persons, are deemed as related persons if such persons are, see, read the heading. The section starts like this. Persons, including legal persons, are deemed as related persons if such persons are legally recognized partners. What do they say? Say a partnership firm. See, our firm, BSLS and Associates, wherein 4 partners are there. Saravana Kumar is a partner, Balasubramanian is a partner. Correct. Such persons are legally recognized partners means partnership firm and partners are not related. That is not covered by this definition. BSLS and Associates and partners are not related. It is not covered by the rest of the entities also. Even 25% they are taking about shares. Control aspect it may cover, but here what do they say? These partners are related. These partners are related, but not the firm and partners. That is what they say here, right? Such persons are employer-employee. All my employees are related to me. And the transaction between employer and employee amounts to supply because they are related person. A third person, 25%. Rest of the thing is self-explanatory. More than 25% shares controlling the entity, or 2 entities are controlled by 1 person, or same family. Such persons are members of the same family. You need to know the definition of family. What is family? Using this, they have asked a question. Very, very important. We will discuss an example for that. Such persons are members of the same family. And next is sole concessionaire or distributor. One person, my entire business depends on one supplier or one customer. Sole concessionaire or sole agent or sole distributor. That is also a related person. That is what they say. So point number 2 says when transaction happens between these related person, then it amounts to supply. And the another aspect they are telling between distinct person as specified in section 25. What is the distinct person? See, I have an office in Delhi. I have a chartered accountant office. See, Chennai. Let's assume that I have an office in Tamil Nadu, Chennai. My firm has got another office in Bangalore. Chartered accountancy office in Bangalore. There, two partners are there in Bangalore. 2 partners are there in Chennai. Now, these 2 entities have only one PAN, but they have 2 GST numbers because in Bangalore they have to take 1 GST number. In Chennai, we have to take 1 GST number. Transaction between these 2 entities are considered as supply by virtue of clause 2. I will tell an example. See, our Chennai office has got a work. say for example, some internal audit or some investigation work. We are not that much expert in investigation. Our domain is GST. Our Bangalore office is their domain is in investigation. So we are allotting this work to Bangalore office. Bangalore office is deputing some persons here and they are doing the work. Bangalore office is raising bill to the client. So the client is, giving, and some staff are deputed from our office also. So for this, we are getting some money from Bangalore office. Out of the total fees collected, some 20% we are getting, 80% is retained by Bangalore office. This 20% is the consideration, right? For which GST would come. Whether GST is payable on this 20% or more or less will be governed by valuation provision. But this transaction, we have supplied manpower for Bangalore office, even though it is our own office, our manpower has been used for Bangalore office. For this service, GST is applicable since it amounts to supply. We have seen employer and employees are related person. Here, they are giving a proviso. Supply of goods or services for both between related persons or between distinct persons as specified in section 25 when made in the course or furtherance of business. Provided that gifts not exceeding 50,000 rupees in value in a financial year by an employer to employee shall not be treated as supply of goods or services, they are saying. What do they mean? My employees are related person. When I am supplying any goods or services to my employee, does that amount to supply? See, for on the eve of Diwali, I am giving sweets to my employees. These are all, it appears, gifts, correct? When these gifts per employee per financial year, if it exceeds 50,000 rupees, then it amounts to supply. So up to 50,000 rupees, it doesn't amount to supply. Many twists are there. We will discuss in the example. So this gift type, I have given many examples. We will discuss when we come for that issues, cases. Third point is principal agent, supply of goods by a principal to agent or by agent to principal. That is a supply. Here also twisted examples are there. It is squarely covered in your syllabus also. We will discuss examples on that. Supply of goods, transaction between principals and agent. That fourth point, import of services by a person. Earlier it was a taxable person. Now they have amended it to include person. Import of, because the difference between taxable person and person. Who is a taxable person? A person who has taken registration or who is liable to take registration. Person, he need not be a taxable person, meaning he may not do any business. Still he is a person. See the importance. Import of services by a person from a related person or from any of his other establishment outside India in the course or furtherance of his business. What does that mean? See, my brother is in London. He is a famous architect. So that architect brother is giving me free consultancy. I told you an example. Import of services from a person in London. I am constructing a house here. My brother is in or my brother or my son, let's assume. My son is in London. He is a famous architect. Why I am shifting from brother to son, I will tell you an example. Okay, there is a logic in it. Let us assume my son is in London. My son is a famous architect in London. My son is providing me architect service and he doesn't charge any consideration. He doesn't charge any consideration. Does that amount to supply? Please remember, here read the full sentence. Import of services by a person from a related person or from any other establishment outside India. Very important. In the course or furtherance of business. My son is giving me consultancy service, but it is not in the course or furtherance of business of my house. Here, house, for the purpose of self-occupation, my personal purpose, I am constructing a house. This is no way connected to business. So since this is a personal purpose, it is not amounting to service. But the same case, my son is providing me service for construction of my office. When I construct office, when I get service from my son, that amounts to supply because it is in the course or furtherance of business, even though there is no consideration. Schedule 1 says without consideration. Even though there is no consideration, when I get service from my son, it amounts to supply. So these four aspects are very, very important. Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets, supply of goods or services between related persons, 50,000 rupees exception is there. Principal agent transaction, import of services by a person, related person, or any of his establishment. What does that any of his establishment outside India? Any of my other establishment, I have a branch in Dubai. When I have a branch in Dubai, when I get any services from that Dubai branch, it amounts to supply when it is used in the course of furtherance of business, even if it is without consideration. That is what your supply says. And here, this principal agency transaction, goods only covered, not services. So goods, wherever there are goods are supplied from principal to agent or agent to principal, that is alone covered here. When services are covered, they are not covered under Schedule 1. That will not amount to supply whenever there is no consideration. So that you have to remember. Let us see examples on the aspects which we have discussed so far, and thereafter we'll move on to other aspects. I said import of services, supply treatment. We will see these examples first, and thereafter I'll come back to these slides. Ajay Furniture, furniture dealer, he donates 10 chairs to a charitable trust. Ajay Furniture is the proprietor is Mr. Ajay. Mr. Ajay donates 10 chairs to a charitable trust. Does that amount to supply? Is GST payable? If payable, by whom? We have discussed this point. So 10 chairs are donated by Ajay, but there is no consideration. Does that amount to supply? It will amount to supply. We have seen in Schedule 1, when Mr. Ajay has taken input tax credit on it, then it amounts to supply. He has to pay tax on those 10 chairs. Suppose he has not taken input tax credit on those chairs, when he is donating those chairs to charitable trust, it doesn't amount to supply. But in case of charitable trust, when charitable trust receives those chairs, does it give any consideration? No consideration is given. Since no consideration is involved, it doesn't amount to supply for charitable trust. But for Mr. Ajay, does that amount to supply? If he has taken input tax credit, it amounts to supply. If it is not, it doesn't amount to supply. Next, X Limited, factory at Chennai dispatches 500 meters of fabric to its Raichur unit of Karnataka and 100 meters to Erode unit as a stock transfer. So Chennai factory sends 500 meters to Raichur of Karnataka and 100 meters to Erode unit. Does that amount to supply? First of all the factories in Tamil Nadu will have only one registration. But factories in other state will have another registration. Here related party, the Erode unit and Chennai unit are one and the same. So stock transfer between Chennai and Erode, it doesn't amount to supply. But stock transfer between Chennai and Raichur of Karnataka, that amounts to supply because distinct person as per section 25. Both are related person. When stocks are transferred from Chennai to Karnataka, GST is payable, it amounts to supply. How do we say that it is a supply? Schedule 1, clause 2. And even you can take clause 1, permanent transfer and disposal of business assets, because input tax credit is availed. So that you need to see. X Limited, in continuation to point number 2, X Limited sends fabric to send the above fabric to above units through its own trucks. X Limited, Chennai unit, what does it say? It's using own truck. It is sending those goods to other units. The trucks are also used by Raichur unit for sending goods to its customer in Karnataka on its return to Chennai unit. These trucks were serviced by Raichur unit at Karnataka before it leaves to Chennai. Very, very important. This point has been, this I have taken from your questions for practice. This may come in exam. Please remember, X Limited Chennai is sending goods to Karnataka. So Karnataka நாங்க அனுப்புறாங்க, குட்ஸ் அனுப்புறப்ப இதை சப்ளை நம்ம பார்த்துட்டோம். இப்ப இந்த குட்ஸை எதுல அனுப்புறாங்க? அவங்களோட ஓன் ட்ரக்ஸ்ல. யாரோட ட்ரக்ல? சென்னைக்குன்னு ஒரு ட்ரக் இருக்கு, அந்த ட்ரக்ல அனுப்புறாங்க. இதை எங்க அனுப்புறாங்க? ரெய்ச்சூருக்கு அனுப்புறாங்க. ரெய்ச்சூருக்கு அனுப்பிச்சதுக்கு அப்புறம் என்ன பண்றாங்க? ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட் they are sending back to after transferring the stock, that is So after the stocks are unloaded, the truck is coming back to Chennai. சரி எம்டியா ஏன் வரணும் அப்படிங்கிறதுனால ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட் என்ன பண்றாங்க, சில குட்ஸை லோட் பண்ணி நீங்க போறப்ப கர்நாடகால இருக்கக்கூடிய என்னோட கஸ்டமர், சேஃபார் பெங்களூர்ல இருக்கக்கூடிய என்னோட கஸ்டமருக்கு அங்க அவரோட பிளேஸ்ல இறக்கி வச்சுட்டு அப்படி நீங்க சென்னை போங்க அப்படின்னு இந்த ட்ரக்ட சொல்லிடுறாங்க. ஸோ அப்ப அங்க போய் இறக்கி வச்சுட்டு போறாங்க. ஸோ இப்ப அவங்க கொண்டு போய் இறக்கி வச்சுட்டு போறப்ப ஆக்சுவலா ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட்டுக்கு போன உடனே அங்க ட்ரக் கொஞ்சம் ரிப்பேர் ஆயிடுது. அந்த ரிப்பேரை சரி பண்றது யாரு, தட் கர்நாடகா யூனிட். Now we need to identify what are all the supply transactions involved in this example. First of all, sending fabrics to Raichur unit is a supply. We know GST is payable. Second aspect, truck. This truck is being used to send the goods to Raichur unit. Now that transportation service is provided by Chennai unit to Raichur unit. Does that amount to service? It is a transaction between related party. We have to identify whether does that amount to supply. Third, Raichur unit திரும்ப வர்றப்ப அவங்களோட யூனிட்ல, அவங்களோட கஸ்டமர் யூனிட்ல குட்ஸை இறக்கி வச்சுட்டு அப்படியே சென்னை போக சொல்றாங்க, ட்ரக்க ஓகேன்னு சொல்லிட்டாங்க. ஃபோர்த், ஆக்சுவலா சென்னையில இருந்து ட்ரக் ரெய்ச்சூர் போறப்ப அங்க ரிப்பேர் ஆயிட்டதுனால what you call this Raichur unit ரிப்பேர் பண்ணிடுறாங்க, அங்க ரிப்பேர் சர்வீஸ் வேற பண்ணிருக்காங்க. ஸோ இப்ப இந்த 4 டிரான்சாக்ஷன்ஸ்ல எது சப்ளை எது சப்ளை இல்ல. சோ ஃபர்ஸ்ட் டிரான்சாக்ஷன் நம்ம என்ன சொல்றோம்ப்பா, ட்ரக் ஸ்டாக் ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் பண்றது சப்ளைன்னு சொல்லிட்டோம். செகண்ட் டிரான்சாக்ஷன் என்ன சொல்றோம், ரெய்ச்சூர்ல போய் அங்க போனோன்னு ரிப்பேர் ஆயிருக்கு. சோ அப்ப ரிப்பேர் யார் பண்ணிருக்கா, ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட்டே பண்ணிருக்காங்க. இந்த ரிப்பேர் சர்வீஸ் does that amount to supply? Yes, it amounts to supply. Why? Services provided by the related person to Chennai unit for which GST is payable, it amounts to supply. Third, இந்த ட்ரக் யாரோட ட்ரக்னு சொல்றோம், சென்னையோட ட்ரக். சென்னை யூனிட்டோட ட்ரக் குட்ஸை எடுத்துட்டு ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட்டுக்கு போயிருக்குது. அப்ப ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட்டுக்கு போறப்ப இந்த டிரான்ஸ்போர்டேஷன் சர்வீஸ்க்கு அவங்க பண்ணணுமா, நம்ம இவ்வளவு நேரம் அனலைஸ் பண்ற டிரான்சாக்ஷனை வச்சு பண்றப்ப they have to pay GST, it amounts to supply. But there is a circular. The government has given a circular number 1/1/2017 IGST, interstate movement of various modes of conveyance, trucks, tankers, trailers, buses, etc. shall not be treated as supply, because government has got power to specify those transactions which are neither amounting to supply nor amounting to supply of goods nor amounting to supply of services. So அதுக்கு என்ன வராதுன்னு சொல்லிருக்காங்கப்பா, it will not be no GST would be applicable when it is considered, when it is treated as neither supply of goods nor supply of services by government. So using that power, the government has given a notification, and the clarification is given by the government by virtue of circular number 1/1/2017 dated 7th July 2017. It says that நீங்க ட்ரக்க ஒரு யூனிட்ல இருந்து இன்னொரு யூனிட்டுக்கு அனுப்புறப்ப இந்த டிரான்ஸ்போர்டேஷன் சர்வீஸ்க்கு நீங்க ஜிஎஸ்டி கட்ட வேண்டாம், because you need not consider that as a supply ன்னு சொல்லிட்டாங்க. பட் அதர் சர்வீசஸ்க்கு, சப்போஸ் இந்த ட்ரக்கே நான் வந்து ஸ்டாக் ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் பண்றேன், இந்த ட்ரக் இனிமே எனக்கு வேண்டாம், அந்த யூனிட்டை யூஸ் பண்ணிக்கிறேன், அப்ப அது சப்ளை ஆயிடும். இப்ப ரிப்பேர் சர்வீஸ் பண்ணிருக்காங்க யாரு, ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட் பண்ணிருக்காங்க. யாரோட ட்ரக்க பண்ணிருக்காங்க, சென்னை ட்ரக்க பண்ணிருக்காங்க. இப்ப அந்த ரிப்பேர் சர்வீஸ் அமௌண்ட் டு சர்வீஸ் பிகாஸ் டிரான்சாக்ஷன் பிட்வீன் ரிலேட்டட் பார்ட்டி. ரெண்டாவது, லாஸ்ட், ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட் அவங்களோட ஸ்டாக்க அவங்க கஸ்டமர்ஸ்க்கு அன்லோட் பண்ண சொல்லிருக்காங்க திரும்ப சென்னைக்கு வர்றப்ப. That is also not amounting to supply because it is a transportation service. Again, it is a transportation service that is not covered by this circular. So there will not be GST applicable on it. Very, very important. 4 kinds of transactions are there in this particular example. Next example. X Limited's plant head of Chennai unit along with his team visits Karnataka unit to install a machinery at Raichur unit. Prasad, நான் இந்த ஸ்லைடோட முடிச்சுக்கிறேமா, அதுக்கு அடுத்து we will have a break and thereafter we will come back.
Sure sir.
Fine. So X Limited probably இந்த பாயிண்டோட முடிச்சிடுறேன். அதுக்கு அடுத்து we will come back again. X Limited plant சென்னை plant head இப்ப கர்நாடகா ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட்ல ஒரு மெஷினரி இன்ஸ்டால் பண்ணணும். அந்த மெஷினரியை இன்ஸ்டால் பண்றது எப்படின்னு சொல்லி அங்க ரெய்ச்சூர் யூனிட்ல இருக்கக்கூடிய ஆபீசர்ஸ்க்கு தெரியல. அதனால இங்க என்ன பண்றாங்க, கர்நாடகாவின் சென்னையில இருக்கக்கூடிய பிளான்ட் ஹெட் தன்னோட டீம் எல்லாம் கூட்டிட்டு அங்க போறாரு. அங்க போய் மிஷினரி இன்ஸ்டால் பண்ணி கொடுக்குறாரு. ரெண்டு ஒரே கம்பெனி தான், அவங்க கன்சிடரேஷன்லாம் ஒன்னும் சார்ஜ் பண்ணல. பட் அது சப்ளையா? எஸ், இட் அமௌண்ட்ஸ் டு சப்ளை பிகாஸ் இட் இஸ் a transaction between related party. They have to pay GST. And what value, sir? எப்படி வேல்யூவை கண்டுபிடிக்கிறது? செக்ஷன் 15 ரூல் 28 அங்க எப்படி கண்டுபிடிக்கணும்னு சொல்லியிருக்காங்க. சோ அந்த வேல்யூ படி நம்ம பண்ணணும். X Limited of Chennai sends its semi-finished goods is Mumbai factory for job work. ஜாப் ஒர்க் எனக்கு யார் பண்ணி கொடுக்குறா? இன்னொரு ஸ்டேட்ல இருக்கக்கூடிய என்னோட யூனிட் பண்ணி கொடுக்குறாங்க. ஈவன் தோ கன்சிடரேஷன் இல்லாட்டாலும் கூட that amounts to supply. For job work charges, GST would be applicable. So now let's break for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, Prasad?
Sir, 10 minutes, sir.
10 minutes. So now it's 8:32. By 8:42, we'll reassemble.
Yes, sir. We'll reassemble at 8:45, sir.
Students, in case you have any queries, you can put it in chat box also. So at the end, we will revisit again. And one request has come. Can you explain in English? Because not able to understand Tamil. Okay, ma. Noted, ma. I will definitely continue in English. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Shall we start, Prasad?
Yeah, you can proceed.
Can you give me screen share power?
I'll make you. Yes, sir, you can proceed, sir.
Is it visible now?
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So, Prasad, one more thing,
Yeah,
uh,
sir.
question clarification, you will give powers to the participants to converse, or will they put their questions in chat box?
They can unmute themselves, sir. I have not muted
So
all
you'll
of them.
unmute them.
Obviously, yeah.
Okay.
They can
Probably
unmute.
for 5 minutes, shall we have the question answer session for the so far covered question?
Yeah, sure, sir. So,
Yeah,
students who wish
yeah,
to raise
please.
doubts, you can like unmute yourself and raise your queries to sir. He will be answering you. Anyone have any queries, students?
Fine.
So there's a question in chat box. Sahana is asking, can you please explain X with the truck sum once again?
Okay, fine. I'll explain. Yeah, see, in our example, what we have seen is, sorry, this X Limited has factory in Chennai. This X Limited has factory in Karnataka, right? Raichur in Karnataka. Raichur is a part of Karnataka. First transaction, it is sending stocks to Raichur. It is a supply we have seen. These stocks are transferred using the vehicle of X Limited. X Limited is sending goods to Karnataka, right, through its own truck. Here, X Limited of Chennai is providing transportation service to Karnataka. So, whether we have to analyze, does it amount to supply? Circular number 1/1/2017 IGST, interstate movement of various modes of conveyance shall not be treated as supply. That's what it has clarified. So for this transportation service, though it is happening between related party, without consideration, it is not amounting to supply. That is the clarification we have received. So out of the 4 transactions, the first transaction is stock transfer is subject to supply. It amounts to supply, GST is payable. Second transaction, truck is being used. Whose truck? X Limited's Chennai unit truck is used to send the goods to Karnataka unit. So this transportation service, it doesn't amount to supply. Third leg, after this truck landed in Karnataka, it has got repaired. Some minor repair has happened. That minor repair is resolved by Karnataka unit. So that repair service is a service supplied by Karnataka unit to Chennai unit. So this is a supply. This is a repair service, not a transportation service. Fourth one, this Karnataka unit, while the truck is returning to Chennai, it is loading its own goods, Karnataka goods, and the direction is given to the driver. You please unload the goods on the way to Chennai at my customer location in Karnataka. So this is also a transportation service provided by Chennai unit to Karnataka unit, covered by this circular. It is not amounting to supply. So whenever there is, the concept here is supply of goods or services between related person shall amount to supply, but exception to this concept is interstate movement of various modes of conveyance like trucks, tankers, trailers, buses, etc. happening between 2 registered persons in 2 different states will not amount to supply. So that's what we have tried to insist on this example. Somebody has raised a hand. Can you unmute them, Prasad?
Yes, sir, I will do that.
Somebody has raised hand.
Yeah.
Ram Prasad raised a query. Shall I answer Ram Prasad's query?
Sure, sir.
Sir, you were talking about the removal of goods without consideration. How will it get enforced on a practical point of view? How will the authorities be able to identify whether the party is disclosing it or not? Thanks. Because there is no formal supply record taking place, would it be difficult for the authorities to correctly identify the incumbent supply? And one more thing, I will answer this question first and thereafter I will give a suggestion, right? These 2 points are very much important to all the students, which I am going to tell now. The first answer to your question is, it can easily be tracked by the authorities, because whenever you supply goods, the movement happens from your factory, the goods move out of your factory, you are required to raise e-waybill. You are required to raise e-waybill. So all the goods which are moving in a truck must have e-waybill. If it doesn't have e-waybill, the goods will be seized. You just go to Google, the cases, high court cases delivered in the last 6 months. You ignore lockdown period before April. How many cases have been filed for seizure of vehicles and conveyances on account of non-raising of e-waybill? Then you see that you will have a number of cases. So conveyance would be seized if goods are transported without e-waybill. So by means of e-waybill, authorities will be able to easily track that goods are moving without invoice and e-waybill. So with that, they will be able to identify. Fine. Are you convinced with your exam in my answer, Mr. Ramprasad? You can put it in chat box. Thank you, sir. Fine. And one more suggestion I want to give all the students is, whenever you read to the extent, because it may all of you may be doing articles, may not be doing articles, but some of you may be doing you may have an intention of joining articles after your passing out this intermediate. What I suggest is, whenever you prepare for the exam, don't go too much for practical thing, except if you understand, fine. If you don't understand, because this e-waybill concept is a direct concept, I could explain you. There are many other aspects. If you drill down for a practical aspect, you may not get answer. You should not stuck down in that portion alone. So what they intend to say, those concepts, please keep accumulating it and go ahead and try to finish your syllabus as early as possible. Your concentration should be on exam orientation. Of course, when you are doing articles, when you have exposure in your office, obviously you can ask your principal. You can track how does that happen in a practical way. It's a fantastic aspect. Whenever you read along with the practical application, always it will be stored in your mind. I do accept. But when you don't have a chance for it, when you read, please confine yourself to understanding, conceptual understanding. Because like how the authorities will trace, that will not be asked in your question, right? But it is good that I appreciate your spirit that you want to understand. But for the purpose of exam orientation, I suggest you confine yourself to the conceptual understanding. And even then you want to understand, means whenever you have time, you can ask people like me or others who are practitioners who are doing in GST, you can ask, right? So that's what the two suggestions I wanted to tell. The next question one has raised. Sir, for C example, you have said for repairs charges will attract, whether the attract interstate or intrastate supply. Fine. So this is an interstate supply for which GST has to be attracted. I mean, GST has to be paid on the value determined under section 15, read with rule 28 of CGST rules. Valuation rules are not covered in your syllabus. It is final syllabus. So according to rule 28, you need to ascertain the value. On that value, you need to pay IGST. And next, whether free samples are supplied, sir, and taking goods to exhibition, that's what is misspelled, I think. Goods to exhibition is supply. These goods are not sales in exhibition, but goods are moved from place of supply to exhibition spot. Free samples are supply, ma'am, because you would have taken input tax credit on the same. Whenever goods are taken for exhibition purpose, you have to raise a delivery challan and e-waybill. So the delivery challan and e-waybill is the evidence for transporting the goods. When at the exhibition, when you sell goods, you have to charge GST. And if sample is given, because you would have taken input tax credit on those samples. So it is a supply as per clause 1 of schedule 1. You have to pay GST on that. Fine. Any other questions? Fine. In case, can you please state some examples for reverse charge? Reverse charge, we are going to discuss fully, ma. Don't worry, Mr. Damodaran. It's a separate topic. We will discuss all the connected aspects of reverse charge in a while. Anything else? Fine. Okay, ma. Thank you. Thank you all for your active participation. I'm so happy. So we will move to next slide. Mr. Raji is a teacher. She bakes cakes and sell them only during summer camps organized each year. So does that amount to supply? As a vacation she is doing. Even though she is doing only for a short period, it amounts to business. In business definition, we have already seen volume, frequency is not important. Only commercial motive is important. And even you may not earn a profit. That is not important. The moment you do these things, that amounts to business. So Raji has to, in case her threshold limit exceeds, she has to take registration and pay GST. Mr. Raja sells his used branded car for rupees 42 lakhs. So for goods, the exemption threshold limit is what do you call 40 lakhs. It has exceeded. Is he required to take registration? So there is a press release dated. It is this example clarified in CBEC FAQ, and there is a press release in 30th July 2017. So Bo, you can find answer on these two examples there, which is found in your study material also. This has been tested in the questions for practice also. So Mr. Raja, when he sells his used branded car, he has used exclusively for his personal purpose. When personal assets are sold, he doesn't have any commercial intent. He doesn't have any trading intent. So vacational intent. In that case, that doesn't amount to GST. It will not be applicable. GST she has exchanged her, Mrs. Vasanti has exchanged her used jewelries in a jeweler.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Sir, your video got stuck in between, sir. Can you repeat second point again, sir? The
Yeah, I'm
personal purpose.
Branded car, right?
Yes.
Okay. See, Mr. When Raja sells his used branded car, it is used for his personal purpose. That is no way used for his business purpose or professional purpose. So that is used, Mr. So let us assume Mr. Raja is a general manager in a company. Using his salary income, he has purchased a car, and that say branded car he has purchased. After several years, he has sold that car. So that car has been used only for personal purpose, and he doesn't have intent to engage in the trading of car. Correct. So that doesn't amount to business purpose. It is neither a trading, nor commerce, nor manufacture, nor profession, nor vacation, nor wager. So it is no way connected to those aspects which are given in the business definition. Hence, it is not subject to GST. That is what the answer you could find in GST FAQ issued by Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. But when you analyze this aspect in depth, in my opinion, the definition says there need not be any frequency on it. So when there is no frequency on it, you can take an alternative view that even once you are selling that, your intention is to dispose the car and have a profit. That means it is covered. It may be covered by business definition, but of course, the legal view can be taken from the GST FAQ, frequently asked question issued by CBEC. So it is not a business, and hence no GST would be applicable. Likewise, the same answer for Mrs. Vasanti. When Mrs. Vasanti exchanged her used jewelers, say for example, some 50 severance she is exchanging, and she is getting back new jewelers, new ornaments for that. That is also not amounting to supply, is the clarification given by CBEC press release, because those jewels are used for personal purpose. When she is exchanging, though that exchange amounts to supply as per supply definition, it is not in the course or furtherance of business, and hence it is not amounting to supply, is the clarification given in press release dated 13th July 2017. Next, Mr. If one question has come, if ITC is availed, then would it be a supply? Once, when you can avail the ITC, only when the assets or goods are used for the purpose of business. When you purchase a car, you will not take ITC. When you purchase a jewelry, you will not take ITC, because you are not in the business itself. When you are not in the business itself, you will not take ITC. Correct? If suppose if there is, if you are in business, it is immaterial whether you have taken ITC or not, because there is a consideration that is used in the course of furtherance. It is made by a person. Transaction when your business car is sold. Suppose you have a jewelry shop. When you are selling ornaments, obviously it is immaterial. In the car example, you would not have taken ITC, because in terms of section 17(5), you cannot take credit. It is a blocked credit. You cannot take credit on motor car, right? So in that case, when sale of car happens, when that car is used as a business asset, it is a supply. But in our example, what are we seeing is the car is being used for personal purpose. He is a general manager in a company, correct? So whether he would not have taken ITC, and the question of ITC doesn't arise here. And since the car has been used purely for personal purpose, it doesn't amount to supply, is the answer we have seen, right? And the next example, Mr. Raja identifies buyers for Mr. Rana. Thereafter, Mr. Rana sends the goods to those identified buyers. Mr. Raja does not charge any commission for it, since Mr. Rana is his friend. Please understand, Raja and Rana are friends. So what Raja does for Rana, he identifies some buyers for Mr. Rana. And Raja calls Rana, see, in Madurai, Salem, these are the buyers who intend to buy your product. So you can contact them. So he is giving the contact details of these identified buyers. Thereafter, Mr. Rana contacts these buyers and he sells the goods. So now this business support service is being provided by Mr. Raja to Rana, but he doesn't charge any consideration for it. Now the question is, does this amount to supply? First of all, we have to analyze Mr. Raja and Rana are related party. They are not related party. As per explanation, we have seen principal agents are not coming there. But principal agent, we have seen somewhere else, where in schedule 1, when goods are supplied by principal to agent, agent to principal, then it is a, even if it is without consideration, it amounts to supply, we have seen. Here in our example, goods are not transported from Raja to Rana, Rana to Raja. Correct. So in this case, it is not covered by schedule 1. But the question asked here is, the consideration is not charged. Does it amount to supply? If it amounts to supply, it should be covered by schedule 1. Schedule 1, it is, they are not related parties. Hence, no supply would be there. Additional question. Will they be regarded as the agent? Suppose. Now, after identifying the buyers, Mr. Rana has sold goods to those identified buyers. He is so happy. And Mr. Rana is asking Mr. Raja, can you please act as my agent? You open a shop. Mr. Rana is in Salem and he is asking Mr. Raja, can you please open a branch in Madurai? So I will send goods to you. You sell on my behalf. Could you please do that? And Raja agrees to it. Okay, Mr. Rana, I will do that. So Mr. Rana tells, whatever goods you are selling, you reduce your commission. 2% commission you reduce. Balance proceeds you send to me. And Mr. Raja agrees to it. Okay, they are entering an agency agreement. Now the question is, Mr. Rana of Salem sending goods to Raja. Mr. Raja is selling those goods. The question here is, the goods sent by Rana to Raja, this transfer, will it amount to supply? Please remember, both are happening inside Tamil Nadu. Mr. Rana of Salem, Mr. Raja of Madurai. Correct? Does that amount to what do you call supply? We need to see. So they are telling that principal agent, they have entered a principal agency agreement. What we have seen in schedule 1, schedule 1 says, I'm going back. What schedule 1 says? Supply of goods from agent to principal. See, supply of goods by a principal to his agent, where the agent undertakes to supply such goods on behalf of the principal, or by an agent to his principal when the agent undertakes to receive such goods on behalf. So whenever goods are transferred between principal and agent, it amounts to supply, is what we have seen in schedule 1. So for this transfer, do they have to charge GST? Please remember, a circular has been given for this purpose. A clarity has been given by the government, circular number 51/2000. Which is, what does it say? Very, very important point. I request all the students to keenly listen in case of principal and agency transaction. This transfer, the transfer made from Salem to Madurai, will be regarded as supply in one scenario, will not be regarded as supply in another scenario. In which scenario it will be regarded as supply, in which scenario it will not be regarded as supply is based on the nature of document raised by Raja of Madurai to the customers. Please listen. Scenario number 1, Salem, from Salem, Rana sending goods. Raja is receiving goods. After receiving the goods, when Mr. Raja sells these goods to the customers of Madurai, when he raises invoice to the customers, if he mentions, Mr. Raja of Madurai, when he mentions Mr. Raja as the supplier, not Mr. Rana. Originally, the goods pertain to Mr. Rana. In spite of the fact that goods pertain to Rana, Mr. Raja raises the invoice and is indicating the name of Raja and not Rana. Supplier as Raja. When that being the case, Mr. Raja is regarded as the agent. In that case, goods sent from Salem to Madurai will be regarded as a supply. Will be regarded as a supply. And scenario number two. In scenario number two, if Mr. Raja sells the goods to customers of Madurai and he raises invoice stating Mr. Rana as the supplier, in that case, it will not be regarded as supply. Which one will not be regarded as supply? Stock transfer from Salem to Madurai will not be regarded as supply. Please understand, I will tell the logic behind this particular circular, but please understand for your exam orientation, when this transfer will be regarded as supply, when this will not be regarded as supply, you have to be very keenly observe. What does that say? If Mr. Raja raises invoices to his customer, stating himself to be the supplier, then this will be regarded as the supply transfer. Which one? Salem to Madurai will be regarded as the supply, for which Rana has to pay GST and Raja will take input tax credit. And in case Mr. Raja raises invoice and mention Mr. Rana to be the supplier, this will not be regarded as supply. Which one? The stock transfer between Salem to Madurai will not be regarded as supply. Understood, everyone? Now let me tell the logic. Do anyone have doubt on this transaction? Fine. Now, please listen. Let me tell the logic and thereafter let me move on to the next example. The logic here is, see, in this transaction, if I am the true agent of Mr. Rana, this transfer is regarded as stock transfer. Now, why do the circular says, if you raise invoice in your name, the agent raises invoice in his name itself, that is stating him to be the supplier, then it is this transfer is taxable. Why do they say? See, in that case only, the right of selling the goods has been transferred from Mr. Rana to Raja. Only then he is regarded as agent. If Mr. Raja is putting Rana as the supplier in the invoice, that means that he is simply the branch in charge of Raja. That is Rana. Mr. Rana has appointed Raja as his in charge. He has not transferred the right of selling the goods. Whatever happens in Madurai, the responsibility is Rana only. But when the responsibility is Raja's, only then he is regarded as the agent. So this is meticulously explained in your study material also. If anybody has doubt, you can ask me. At the last part, we will again, I will explain this transaction since this is very important. Mr. X receives the goods from Mr. Y and Mr. Y requests Deepika K has raised hand. Yes, Deepika, you can unmute yourself and ask quickly because we have a lot to cover.
So can I come again with the explanation?
Which one, ma? You want me to explain the logic or you want me to explain the example?
Example, sir.
Fine. So again, tell me, please, all of you listen, ma. Let me repeat it again. Because it can be tested. So far, it is not yet tested. It can be tested in the ensuing exam and which is found in your question for practice, which is found in your study material also. Please listen keenly. See, Mr. Raja and Rana, both are two persons. Mr. Rana is the seller of goods. He has stocks in his hand. He is asking Mr. Rana is asking Mr. Raja, or if Raja Rana is confusing, let me put XY. X of Salem, Y of Madurai, let us assume. So X is the owner of goods. X is sending goods to Y. Y has a shop in Madurai. What Mr. X says, Mr. Y, I will send you goods. You sell the goods, deduct your commission, send me the proceeds. He is telling, suppose 1 lakh rupees he is selling means 2,000 he will retain. 98,000 he will give it to whom? To Mr. X of Salem. Now the question is, X is sending goods to Y. He will not charge any consideration for it because Mr. X is asking Y to sell the goods on his behalf. Correct? For this transaction, he will not charge anything. Mr. Y, after selling the goods, he will remit the amount to Mr. X. Now the question is whether Mr. X has to charge GST for the transaction which is without consideration. That is goods being transported from Salem to Madurai. Now this Y of Madurai, in one scenario, it has to be treated as supply. In another scenario, it will not be treated as supply. What is that first scenario? If Mr. Y is raising invoice, when he sells X goods in Madurai, when he sells when Y sells X goods in Madurai, Y of Madurai, X of Salem. When Y sells goods, X goods in Madurai, when he raises invoice and he states Mr. Y as the supplier, himself to be the supplier in the invoice, in that case, Mr. X has to treat this as a supply transaction. Which transaction? Sending goods from Salem to Madurai will be regarded as the supply transaction, and Mr. X has to raise a tax invoice. He has to charge GST on it. So he has to pay that GST. Mr. Y will take input tax credit. And next scenario, Mr. Y in the invoice raised to customer, if he states Mr. X to be the supplier, Mr. X to be the supplier. In that case, this transaction, which transaction? Stock transfer from Salem to Madurai will not be regarded as stock transfer, will not be regarded as supply transaction. Logic is, if Mr. Y of Madurai raises in the invoice and indicating his name to be supplier, Mr. X has appointed him as the agent. Right of sale has been transferred to Mr. Y. In that case only, there is a true agency transaction. In case Mr. Y is putting Mr. X name as the supplier, Mr. X has appointed him as the showroom in charge, or he is nothing but an employee kind of thing. Who? Mr. Y is an employee of Mr. X. In that case, it will not be regarded as the supply, is the explanation given in the circular, right? Any doubts? Are you convinced, Deepika?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Fine. Okay. So now I am moving to next example. In case of any more doubts, you can ask me at the end of this thing. So the next example, whatever I have told now is I have drafted stating X and Y as this thing. Mr. Shankaran is a teacher in Madurai. His brother, who is settled in New York, is a well-known lawyer. Mr. Shankaran is a teacher in Madurai. His brother, who is settled in New York, is a well-known lawyer. Mr. Shankaran gets his not present in the PPT. Mr. Shankaran receives a legal advice from him free of cost with regard to his family dispute. Is it a supply? So Mr. Shankaran in Madurai gets legal advice from his own brother. His own brother in New York, he is a well-known lawyer there. Now the question is, Mr. Shankaran, when he gets legal advice without consideration, does that amount to supply? Is the question before us, right? So now it is not amounting to supply because as per schedule 1, first of all, wherever this is an import of service transaction, you must understand that this is an import of service transaction because brother is in New York. He is getting a legal advice from his brother in New York, correct? In this case, this import of service, does that amount to supply or not? How do you identify? You have to go to section 7, class B, section 7, subsection 1, class B. What does that say? Import of services. Import of services for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Is it covered by this clause? It is not for a consideration. It is even if it is whether or not in the course or furtherance of business, it says that even if it is for personal purposes, had the consideration being there, it would have been covered by that clause. But this is an import of service, but it is not for a consideration. Hence, section 7(1)(b) doesn't apply. Come to schedule 1. Schedule 1, what does that say? There is if you are getting any service from your relative. If you are getting any service from your relative, if you get any service from your relative, even if it is without consideration, but if it is for the purpose in the course or furtherance of business, it amounts to supply. So now Mr. Shankaran has received legal advice in relation to his family dispute. It is not in the course or furtherance of business. Even if without a consideration, if he is a relative, will it be covered? Because it is not in the course or furtherance of business, it is not amounting to supply. There is another twist in this transaction. Let me say, next example. In the above example, would your answer be different in case he has taken the legal advice with regard to his business unit at Salem? If it is in the relation to his business unit at Salem, will that amount to supply? Please listen. Let us go back to what you call Schedule 1 transaction. Please see clause number 4. Import of services by a person from a related person or from any of his other establishment outside India in the course or furtherance of business. Now, if he is getting any, if he is getting any service from his brother in the course or furtherance of business, he is a factory in Salem. So what does it appear? What does it appear in this transaction? Even though it is without consideration, since it is in the course or furtherance of business, it amounts to supply in terms of clause 4. That is what here applies, right? One important twist is hidden here. What is that twist? See, you have to know the definition of relative. Who is a relative? We have seen. See, in this slide. In this slide. Here, such a person. See this particular clause. Such persons are members of the same family. Such persons are members of the same family. So, members of the same family amount to relative. Very, very important, students. You need to know the definition of family. What is a family is defined in GST. Please see. Family means the spouse and the children of the person and the parents. See, first class is spouse and children of the person. Suppose I am the person. My wife is my family. My children are my family. Please listen. My parents are not covered in clause number 1. My grandparents are not covered in clause number 1. My brothers, sisters are not covered in clause number 1. And my grandson, granddaughter is not covered. Please see clause 2. Clause 2 says family means the parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters of the person. If they are very, very, very important, if they are wholly or mainly dependent on the said person, if they are wholly or mainly dependent on the said person, my spouse and children, irrespective of their dependency, my relative. But my parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters are considered as family. Only if they are considered as family, they will amount to relative. If they are not relative, my schedule 1 itself is not applicable. Okay. Here, my family, the parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, these persons, parents, 4 people, parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, these 4 people must be dependent on me, either wholly or mainly dependent on me. Now come back to our example. Sankaran is a teacher in Madurai. His brother who is settled in New York. Both are independent. Mr. Sankaran is a teacher. So he is surviving with his teaching profession. He is getting salary. Mr. Brother, Sankaran's brother, who is in New York, is a well-known advocate. So he is also an independent. Both are independent. Now, since both are independent, they are not coming within the purview of family. Because as per definition, what does it say, ma'am? My brother, if at all he is forming part of my family, he must be dependent on me. So since in this case, both are independent, they are not of the same family. They are not relatives. They are not relatives. So in our example, it is not covered by, because no consideration exists. It is not covered by section 7(1)(b). And when you come to schedule 1 clause 4, it is not covered by schedule 1 clause 4 also, for the reason that they are not considered as relative. They are not considered as relative. Very, very important point, ma. This may be tested. So please understand this. Using this only, I have put another 2 examples. So I don't want to waste time on it. Let me go to the next slide. At the end of it, probably by 10:50 or 55. Schedule 2, quickly I will run through because we have a lot more to cover. Composition is a very big topic. Many nuances are there in composition. So schedule 2, what is what I will tell you. Some important points I will cover and move on to schedule 3. transfer. I said, what are the things covered in Schedule 2? Your Schedule 1 is, I think students are raising some doubts. I may not be able to tell now. We will see again. I think questions are raised relating to the point which we have discussed. They may unmute themselves at the end of it. Please ask the specific doubt. I will explain. Now, Schedule 2 is, I have now that I have identified what are supplies. After identifying what are supplies, I will have to vivisect. Does that amount to goods or does that amount to service? So I get guidance from Schedule 2. Whether a particular transaction is supply of goods or supply of service, I get guidance from Schedule 2. So Schedule 2 has got 7 broad entries. We'll quickly go through that. So first one is transfer. Point number 1 says, this is an extract from your study material, students. I have just using snip tool, I have taken extract from your study material and pasted in the slide. So this is very much available in your study material also. Any transfer in simple sale will be supply of goods. Simple sale will be straight jacket formula. So just they have given simple sale. Any ownership is transferred in goods from one person to another person will be regarded as supply of goods. You need to see the rate of goods applied, rate of GST for goods. And second point is any transfer of right in goods or undivided share in goods without transfer of title goods. I am hiring my machinery. I am letting you to use my machinery. Machinery is goods, but I am not transferring the title to goods, but right to use goods, right to use machinery is transferred. So this hire transaction is a service transaction. Third one, any transfer of title in goods under an agreement which stipulates that property in ownership shall pass at a future date, your hire purchase transaction. What does that happen in hire purchase transaction? Today I will get some TV set or refrigerator or car, bike, anything. Ownership will be transferred upon payment of last installment. So in that case, even though ownership is transferred at a later point, now the supplier of hire purchase transaction has to GST considering that as a supply of goods and not as a supply of service. That is what first point says. Second point, land and building. Any lease, tenancy, easements, license to occupy land. There is a critical point in tenancy. For the time being, there is a transaction called Pagadi. Simple example I will tell you. Please understand, considering the importance of it. Suppose in Madurai, you know, the famous or the popular place is Meenakshi Amman Temple. So Meenakshi Amman Temple is surrounded by many shops. Many shops are there. So there, whether you open up a shop there, definitely your sale is confirmed. You have a shop there, meaning you have hired a shop there. That shop, you have entered an agreement with the landlord. 10 years, I will alone. You don't have right to hire this property to anybody else other than me. So like you have entered an agreement. Now that for another 10 years, you have paid a premium for that also. You will pay monthly rent. For 10 years, you have taken right of tenancy from your landlord. You have paid a premium to him. Correct? And now that 10 years, you have right of occupancy in that particular place. Now, if you are transferring, you don't want to occupy now. 2 years, you have your showrooms there, but now you have the intention of shifting to Salem or some other place. But you have 8 more years to occupy, right to occupy that particular place for 8 more years. Now you are subletting to somebody else. You are subletting to somebody else. For that purpose, in addition to the rent, you are getting a premium. That is called Pagadi, because that is a prominent place. That is a prominent place. So right of tenancy itself, you are transferring. That right of tenancy is called Pagadi. That Pagadi transaction is a supply of service. That extra premium you are getting, and also the extra premium you are giving to your landlord is a supply of service for which GST is applicable. So that is very important. Second, so normal your renting of immovable property is also covered here. That is a supply of service. And third point is a job work. Job work is a service that is covered there. And fourth point is very, very important, ma. Suppose I have a laptop. This laptop I am using it for my profession. Suddenly now that a lockdown, no classes are there, my son is attending online class. So I am gifting this laptop to my son. This is a supply of goods. That's what they say. Because I have taken input tax credit for the same, it is treated as a supply. Does this amount to supply of goods or supply of service? I mean, I am asking my son to use this property. You use this laptop. Does this amount to service or goods? It is amounting to supply of goods is the clarification given. And next point in fourth point, fourth para point number 2, goods held for business are put to private use or made available to any person for use any purpose other than business. Some company property is there. That company property director is using for his personal purpose. Then that is a supply of service. His own personal purpose, if he is using, that is a supply of service. That is the next point. And next point is you are closing down your business. When you close down your business, some stocks are there, some capital goods are there. You don't want to do business. You are going to the GST officer that I intend to stop my business. So GST officer is asking, do you have any stocks in your? So from this day, say for example, from tomorrow you are closing down your business. So what is the amount of stock in your hand? What are all the list of capital goods you have? So you are providing the list of capital goods and you are giving the list of stocks in hand to him. Now, after closing down these stocks and capital goods, whether you are going to sell it or not, now on the date of closure, this stocks and this capital goods shall be regarded as to be supplied by you, shall be deemed to be supplied by you. That is what the provision says. It shall be amount to supply of goods. Next point is renting of immovable property is a service. Construction of a complex. See, I am entering a construction agreement. I am in apartment construction. Now that you are coming to me, you are asking me, sir, I want two units of apartment. The construction work is in progress. So now you are coming to me and entering a construction agreement. Now this is a service. Suppose after construction you are coming. After construction, sir, I want to purchase an apartment. This will not be regarded as a service. Why it is not regarded as a service? Schedule 3, we are going to see sale of building. Sale of building is not a supply. It is treated neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Hence, it will not be regarded as supply. So, in case you are entering a construction agreement and you are giving advance, even single pi is given as advance before completion of the property, that will amount to supply of service is the clarification given. Next, temporary transfer or permitting use or enjoyment of any intellectual property. See, you have a copyright or you have a patent rights. This copyright is temporarily transferred to anybody else. You are author of a book, so that publishing and distributing the book, that right is given to anybody else. That is a supply of service. Likewise, software, information technology software. In information technology software, one important point you need to remember, when you are temporarily transferring this information technology software, or you are developing a IT software, or you are customizing an IT software, all those stuffs will amount to service. But you are selling a packed software. A software is complete in nature, like your Tally, like your MS Office. This software is complete. That completed software is being sold, then it is a supply of goods. In a completed software or a new software is developed for you, you are coming to me, sir, I want a software. I am developing a software based on the instruction given by you. I am getting a charge for it. That is a service. Or you already have a ERP software. You are asking me to customize that. Sir, I want these additional options. Can you please come and recodify my software? I recodify your software for which I get a consideration. It is a supply of service. I design software for you. I adapt software for you. I upgrade software for you. I enhance software for you. I implement a new software. These are all amounting to service. But which one will be regarded as supply of goods in case of software? If I am selling a developed software to you, like your Tally, Winman, your Computax, these are all developed softwares. So that will amount to supply of goods. Next point, the last point is sixth point in case of this schedule 2 is works contract service. Works contract shall be regarded as supply of service. What is this works contract? Say an immovable property is there, same construction agreement. what do you call some fabrication agreement. Whenever it is relating to an immovable property, square feet, on the basis of square feet, I am getting consideration. Say, for example, in your you want to do you are asking me to do interior decoration for your office. So I am coming, I am measuring all your places. So in this at this place rack should come, at this place sofa should come, at this place shelf should come. So I am measuring all that. I am telling you, okay, sir, I will provide all the things according to the drawing which I have given to you. You also agreed. Now that the consideration is per square feet, you give me 1,500. Per square feet, if you are giving me 1,500 rupees, what are all included here? I am going to give you wood. I am going to give you this plywood. I am going to give you this varnish. All the related interior material I am giving you. And also I am giving you labor component. So supply of goods are also involved, supply of service also involved, and this is forming part of immovable property. When it is forming part of immovable property, this decorative services shall be regarded as a services, even though goods element is involved in it, that shall be regarded as a contract service. That is what the schedule 2 says. And in case of restaurant service, already I have clarified, restaurant, even though good, then that will be regarded as a supply of service. And the last one, supply of goods by an unincorporated association shall be regarded as supply of goods only. So that is these are the elements which are available in schedule 2 of GST. Schedule 2 deals with which one is supply of goods, which one is supply of services. Negative list under schedule 3. What are all the items which are coming under schedule 3? Supplies covered under schedule 3. See, totally 8 elements are there in schedule 3. This last element, no, this is not covered in your syllabus. It is covered in your final syllabus. So we will not see point number 7 and 8 since it is outside the ambit of your syllabus. Till point number 6. Till point number 6, services by an employee to employer. Employee to employer. Services by an employee to employer in the course of or in relation to his employment. So employee is getting salary for his work. That is not regarded as a supply. So coming to your director, no, whole-time director, when he is regarded as a employee, the salary which he gets does not amount to supply. But an independent director, he is not an employee. He is acting as a consultant. The amount which he gets from the company will amount to supply. That is what we need to focus here. And second one, services by any court or tribunal. And point number 3 is MPs, MLAs, Supreme Court, High Court, District Court judges, and your what do you call some boards, government boards are there. The executives of those boards, they're all not covered as next important point is sale, service of funeral, burial, crematorium or mortuary, including transportation of the deceased. So these services are not covered under supplies of goods or neither supply. So that is a person who comes for this, who arranges this funeral, burial, crematorium, all these activities, and including the transportation in an ambulance, or that the body is taken from home to graveyard. All those services are outside the ambit of supply. And point number 5, sale of land. I said when you remember the definition of goods, what are goods? Goods means all immovable property other than money and securities. What are services? Services means anything other than goods. So immovable property appears to be covered within the definition of service. When I sell immovable property, it appears that it is subject to GST, but we are protected by schedule number 3. Schedule number 3, point number 5 says sale of land and subject to clause B of paragraph 5 of schedule 2, sale of building. What does that mean? When I sell completed building, it is not subject to GST. But when before completion, I get consideration from you and I enter a construction agreement. In that case, it is regarded as supply. A completed immovable property, when it is sold, it is not subject to supply. Please remember. So that is very important. And next point, actionable claim. I have told you Actionable claims are included in the definition of goods. What are actionable claim? Unsecured loans, right in certain movable properties, and your assignment of life insurance policies, lottery, betting, gambling. Out of these actionable claims, except lottery, betting, and gambling, all are outside the ambit of GST. So your lottery, betting, and gambling will amount to supply because it is goods. Supply of goods will amount to supply. So that is GST is applicable. But other than lottery, betting, and gambling, all actionable claim, assignment of life insurance policies, right to transfer and secured loan, these are all not amounting to supply. No GST would be applicable. These are the negative list in GST. So you will not have what do you call these point number 7 and 8 in your syllabus. It is covered in your final syllabus. We are not going to see. So that takes us to the next important topic, composition. So that composition is very, very important. We are going to see all the nuances involved in composition. So what is composition scheme? What is the purpose for which the government has introduced a composition scheme? See, in GST, I may be doing business, but I may not do a business in a voluminous basis. If I do, because your GST law, with the view to simplify the entire taxation system, the government has introduced a GST law. But GST law by its nature has got many procedures. Many complaints procedures need to be adhered to be by a registered person. See, many returns are to be filed, many statements are to be filed. If you do any sort of activity in your business that may require to file a statement, say for example, when your product becomes exempted, your product becomes taxable from exempted, you need to file a statement. If you are doing a job work, you need to file ITC 04. And if you are in a regular scheme, you need to file GSTR 3B, GSTR 1, and annual return GSTR 9. You have to compare your input tax credit with GSTR 2A. And now that from this month, the government has introduced the GSTR 2B. So you have to reconcile your income. So many procedures are there. So in order to protect from these tedious procedures, in order to protect all the small taxpayers from these tedious procedures, the government has introduced a composition scheme. So composition scheme is covered by section 10, which is introduced with the objective of to bring simplicity and reduce complaints cost for small taxpayers. So this is only applicable for small taxpayers. So when you are opting for composition scheme, you have benefits as listed in this slide. You need not classify the goods. What are classification? If you see, I've seen some of the dealers who have classified their goods under 12%, but actually they are falling under 18%. Some 2 years would have gone. Now the department comes and issues a notice, boss, your products are coming under 18%, but you have paid only 12%. So balance 6% you cannot get from your customer because you are in B2C supply. So balance 6% you need to pay from your pocket. Interest you need to pay. In terms of section 74 and in section 132, you need to pay 100% penalty. Suppose your 10 lakhs is the differential tax amount comes for this 2 years. 10 lakhs, interest 4 lakhs, another 10 lakhs will be the penalty. So you need to pay 24 lakhs. So this classification issue is not there for composition scheme because anyhow you are going to pay 1%. That's all. And you need not raise tax invoice. For every customer, you need not issue a tax invoice putting all the particulars in it. That is not necessary. And you can pay your tax quarterly instead of monthly. So that is a big working capital benefit for you. You can file your return annually. You need not file monthly or quarterly. Quarterly, a simple statement only you will file. Every year you will file GSTR 4. So that hassle-free filing return is there for you. And turnover limit, who is a small taxpayer? Very important, ma. Now please listen. Now only the difficulty arises. I will not say difficulty, challenge arises. Wherever in GST, you need to see the complex provisions as challenge provisions, not as a difficult provisions. If you tell your mind that is difficult, you will not understand. If you tell your mind as challenging one, obviously you will play a game and you will understand. Now, like in composition scheme, I am going to tell you that challenging provisions for you. Who is a small taxpayer in composition scheme? We are going to bifurcate the taxpayers, small taxpayers, into two categories. Sir, from last year, sir, for service providers also composition has come. It is not so. It is wrong, ma. It is not service providers. You have to bifurcate the composition taxpayers into two categories. Category 1 taxpayer, category 2 taxpayer. And one more disclaimer I am giving you to make it understand simply. I have coined this category taxpayer, category 1 taxpayer, category 2 taxpayer. Nowhere in the law it says that category 1, category 2. Okay, in your exam, don't write category 1, category 2. Understand what I am going to say now. Okay, thereafter, how to write in the present in the exam, I will tell you. So please come with me. So small taxpayers are divided into two categories. Category 1 taxpayer, category 2 taxpayer. Who is a category 1 taxpayer? Category 1 taxpayer can opt for composition scheme if his turnover in the preceding financial year is, if his turnover in the state, aggregate turnover in the state is up to 1 crore rupees, sorry, up to 1.5 crore rupees, he can opt for composition scheme in the current year. Category 2 taxpayer can opt for composition scheme if his aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year is up to 50 lakh rupees. Then he can go for composition scheme in the current financial year. That is what small taxpayers are segregated. Okay. Rate of tax for category 1 taxpayer is 1% in case of all taxpayers other than restaurant service providers. In case of restaurant service providers, it is 5%. So all taxpayers other than restaurant services, 1%. You can be a trader or it can be a manufacturer. So whatever you are billing during the month, pay 1% and finish your task in GST. If you are a restaurant service provider, pay 5% and finish your task. Category 2 taxpayer, if you are falling under category 2 taxpayer, it is not 1% or 5%, it is 6%. 3% CGST, 3% SGST. You need to pay 6%. Fine. Now let me explain the difference between category 1 taxpayer and category 2 taxpayer. Now your 100% attention is required. Please listen. See, category 1 will be applicable for those taxpayers who are involved more in goods and less in services. I have a business wherein involvement of goods element is more and involvement of service element is less. Example, I am a home appliances dealer. Like your Anandas, Anitas, Nadurna. So likewise, I am a home appliances dealer. What do? I purchase home appliance and sell it in the retail market. Apart from this home appliance selling, I am also doing service. If your mixie gets repaired, your fan gets repaired, if your grinder gets repaired, if your cooker gets repaired, pressure cooker gets repaired, you are coming to me and you are asking me repair service. I am doing repair service and for which I get a consideration. So I also do repair service. I also do sale of goods. In this scenario, which one will be more? My sale of goods turnover will be more. My service turnover will be less. For these kinds of taxpayers, category 1 will be appropriate. Category 1 will be appropriate. Category 2. For category 2, what are all the types of taxpayer who may fall under this category 2? Let us take for example, I am running a beauty parlor. I am running a beauty parlor. Wherein what do? I do beautification service. So in beauty parlor, I do beautification service. Along with beautification service, I also sell creams, cosmetics, and beautician articles. In this scenario, which one will be more? My service element will be more or goods element will be more? Obviously, my service element will be more because my prominent element of business is beautification service. So for these kind of taxpayers whose service elements will be more, goods element will be less, for them category 2 will be appropriate. It may be possible that I may have service alone. I may have service alone. In that case, I will fall under category 2. It may be possible that I may have goods alone. In that case, I will go to category 1. Let me explain it in detail also. See, why should not these taxpayers cannot go to category 2? Beautician, because sir, in category 1, the total threshold limit is 1.5 crore. Till 1.5 crore, I will pay only 1% tax. But under category 2, you are telling me only 50 lakhs. Till 50 lakhs, you are telling me I will pay only 6%. Till, what do you say? Till 50 lakhs, I will pay only 6%. I will pay 6%. But in category 1, I will pay 1%. So it appears that category 1 is very appropriate, sir. What is the need for category 2? Let me tell. Under category 1, you may do goods and also service. Under category 2 also, you may goods, you may do goods, you may do service as well. But the point of difference is under category 1, you are eligible to supply goods up to 1.5 crore. No limit, I mean, no margin is there. But in case you are doing service, and if you are choosing category 1, out of total element, a specified limit is given. Till up to that specified limit only, you will be eligible to do service. Up to that specified limit only, you will be eligible to do service turnover. Your goods turnover can be fully up to 1.5 crore. But your service turnover can be up to the specified limit. What is that specified limit? Out of your total turnover, higher of 10% of the turnover are rupees 5 lakhs. So higher of 10% of the turnover are 5 lakhs. Out of this, suppose your turnover during the preceding financial year is 1 crore. Out of 1 crore, 10%, 10 lakhs. Second ad hoc limit 5 lakhs. 10 lakhs or 5 lakhs, whichever is higher, 10 lakh. So you are allowed to do service turnover only up to 10 lakhs. The moment you cross 10 lakh rupees, you are not eligible for category 1. Understood? You are not eligible for category 1. So that is why I said, if you have more service element, then you are eligible to go for category 2 and not for category 1 taxpayer. So the conditions, ineligibility, we will see after clarifying your doubt. Many people have raised doubts. Privately. Prasad, can you unmute anybody who wishes to ask queries?
Okay, sir. Guys, if anyone has any queries, you can feel free to ask, sir.
Because many doubts are there. I don't think we will be able to answer all the queries. In case those who have raised questions can raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask.
So there's a query in chat window, sir.
Sorry?
There's a query in chat window. Deepika is asking in chat window to repeat the specific limit of service turnover.
Yeah. I will explain composition scheme in detail, ma. Before composition, anyhow we are going to many points are we are to see in composition. Other than composition, I'm asking. If buy a car for personal purpose, after some days you used it for business purpose, is it a supply? Fine. So you have a personal car in your personal purpose. You start using that car for business purpose. That converting that personal purpose to business purpose will not amount to supply. But after converting, after you started using that car for business purpose, and thereafter you are selling, means it amounts to supply. Okay. Hope I have clarified your doubt. Anything, ma? Fine. I'll continue. because then and there I have asked a doubt. It is of personal nature. I'm not able to understand. Sir, can you explain the concept of del grader agent? Okay. So as far as a del grader agent is also contained in that circular, who is a del grader agent? Bad debt should also be borne by the del grader agent. See the same example, Raja Rana, XY. This Y, what Mr. X is telling, the moment you sell the goods, you may do it for credit sales also. If you sell on credit terms, it is no concern to me if your customer does not pay you, but you have to pay to me. That is what del grader agent, for which special commission will be given. Because why special commission is given? That agent is given the force power to collect the dues, because he will be responsible for bad debts. That is why the del grader agent category is status is given to that agent. In that case, how do we apply this schedule 1.3? The same analogy applies. Circular also clarifies, even if you are a del grader agent, what are you specifying in your invoice? In your invoice, if you are putting original supplier name as the supplier, then you are not an agent. The transfer from Salem to Madurai will not be regarded as supply. And in that invoice, if you are putting your name as the supplier, in that case, that will be regarded as the supply. That is what the circular says for del grader agent. Hope I have clarified. Sir, is it job work transfer from one state to another amounts to supply? Job work stock transfer. I hope you are asking for related party. For related party, see, Madurai factory is sending goods to Karnataka factory. This is not a stock transfer actually. This is for the purpose of job work. This will not be treated as stock transfer. No GST is payable for the value of stock you are transferring. But for the job work charges, the Karnataka unit is doing job work for you. For that job work, that is supply. Even if no consideration is flowing, that needs to be paid by Karnataka unit to tax invoice is required to be raised by Karnataka unit to what you call Madurai unit. That is amounting to supply. If job work, interstate job work is happening between unrelated party, obviously that is a supply. Even that goods component will not be regarded as supply, because for job work subject to some conditions, this transfer will not be treated as stock transfer. If it is not returned within a period of 1 year in case of goods, 3 years in case of capital goods, then it will amount to supply. Other than those criteria, your job work transaction, that value of goods will not be treated as supply of goods, but that service element, job work charges will be subject to GST. Hope I have clarified to Lakshmi N. Fine. Any more doubts, ma? Okay. Anybody wants to unmute? Fine. So now let me explain this composition scheme again for this service limit turnover. Somebody has asked. I am asking that. See, I am repeating that. See, category 1 taxpayer, as I said, more goods, less service. Category 2 taxpayer, more service, less goods. For category 1, limit is there. What is that limit? Out of total turnover, higher of 10%, higher of 10% or rupees 5 lakhs is allowed to be given as supply of service. Small manufacturer, see this slide. Suppose during the financial year 1920, my total turnover in the state is 1 crore. Out of this 1 crore, I am allowed to do supply of services to a maximum of 10 lakh rupees, meaning 10% of my total turnover. Last year total turnover is 1 crore, 10%, 10 lakhs, right? Ad hoc limit is 5 lakhs. Whichever is higher, 10 lakh is higher. So in last year, my service turnover is suppose rupees 12 lakh rupees. I am not eligible to go for composition scheme 1. Let me explain through a numerical example also, not an issue. Wait a minute. I will share my Excel screen and Excel is visible, right, Prasad?
Sir, visible, sir.
Okay. See, this is my financial year 2019-20 details, wherein sale of goods. Say commission received. Fine. Interest on FDs. Fine. This is 85 lakhs. My commission is say 25 lakhs. My FD 5 lakhs. Financial year 2020-21. Composition under category 1 is the question. Fine. So for category 1, what is the condition? Maximum last year turnover should be less than 1.5 crore. Here it is 1 crore 15 lakhs. So it appears that I am eligible. But there is an additional condition. What does that say? Your service turnover should be higher of 10% of total turnover or ad hoc limit is 5 lakhs. Correct. 10% of total turnover, no? This is total turnover. But please listen, out of my total turnover, for the purpose of computing, aggregate turnover, for the purpose of computing 10% limit, I should exclude interest. I should exclude interest on fixed deposit. So in this case, how much is my total turnover? Which means that how much is the 10% turnover? 11 lakhs. Ad hoc limit 5 lakh. So higher how much? Higher is this 11 lakhs. So if my turnover, service turnover during last year is less than 11 lakhs, I can go for category 1. If it is less than that is more than this 11 lakh, I am not eligible to go for category 1. What is my service turnover? This shall not be regarded as service turnover as per the explanation given in section 10. They say for the purpose of computing your 10% and also for your 1.5 crore limit, you ignore this interest component. So, but for the purpose of total also you ignore. Now that my higher limit is 11 lakh, but how much service turnover I have done during the last year? I have done 25 lakhs. So since it is greater than 25 lakhs, I cannot go for category 1 taxpayer. Can I go for category 2 then? For category 2 also big? No. Why? By category 2, what is the maximum limit? 50 lakhs. So for category 2 also I cannot go. What is the option for me for financial year 2021? Regular. Meaning whatever the rate of tax, for service pay 18%, for goods applicable rate. That is the limit you need to go ahead. Right? Deepika, are you convinced? You have
Yes,
no doubt?
no, sir. Clear now, sir. Thank you.
Fine. Thank you, ma. And sir, if I send capital goods for repairs to another person in another state, is it mandatory to raise the e-waybill or outside the syllabus? See, for interstate, anyhow, for the purpose of doing any job work service, if you are doing any interstate, obviously you have to raise e-waybill. It is very much essential. Mr. Karthik Govindan. Yuvan Prakash, sir, once again, one time of this, which one, ma? Mr. Yuvan Prakash, you want me to explain which concept again? This composition, right? Category 2 once again. Okay, fine. See, Category 2, I will explain you tomorrow in detail, because we don't have time. I have explained you as to category 1. For the time being, you please remember for category 2, maximum turnover limit is 50 lakhs during the preceding financial year. In preceding financial year, if your limit is up to 50 lakh rupees, you can go for category 2. In preceding financial year, if your limit is up to 1.5 crore, subject to these conditions, that is service condition, you can go for category 1. In our example, in 1920, 85 lakhs is the sale of goods. The question is, in financial year 2021, can I opt for composition scheme? Either under category 1 or under category 2. Let us analyze. For sale of goods, it is 85 lakhs, commission 25 lakhs, interest 5 lakhs, total 11 crore 50 lakhs. What is, so since it is less than 1.5 crore, it appears that I am eligible, but I need to satisfy one more condition. What is that condition? My service turnover should not go in preceding financial year. My service turnover should not go beyond 10% of total turnover or 5 lakhs, whichever is higher. So here the total turnover, how do I compute? Out of 11 crore 50 lakhs, I will ignore my interest component. And thereafter, when I calculate 10%, it comes to 11 lakhs. My service turnover during the financial year 1920 should not exceed 11 lakh, but my service turnover has exceeded 11 lakhs, 25 lakhs. Hence, I am ineligible to go for category 1. And next aspect, can I go for category 2? Category 2, maximum threshold limit during the preceding financial year is 50 lakhs. But my total turnover has exceeded 50 lakhs. Goods itself has exceeded 50 lakhs. Hence, I am not eligible to go for category 2 turnover, category 2 composition scheme. Understood, ma? Okay, fine, ma. So balance composition scheme and balance portion. Of course, I know very well that we are backlog of about 15 slides. But then tomorrow, I hope my original plan was to complete till reverse charge today. But then it's not an issue. Understanding is very important. So we will concentrate on reverse charge and a composition scheme in detail tomorrow. And thereafter, we will move on to exemption entries. Under exemption, we will see key entries: your healthcare services, education, and government services. All those stuffs we will see in tomorrow in detail. Thanks a lot for the excellent listening and interaction, for your patient hearing also. My special thanks to Prasad for nicely coordinating. So round the clock, without his support, I do not think that this would be possible. Thank you, ma. Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock, we can meet again. Yeah, Prasad, for your comments.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot for the session, sir. Early morning, 7 o'clock, doing your busy schedule. So we are waiting for your next session also, sir. And also for Bala's class.
Yeah. Sharma. Thank you, all of you.
Thanks, sir.